going to thank you for waiting till I got here, but
You sped along, that was good.
and I'm a dollar richer. I love it.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the September 18th, 2014 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. I'll ask the town administrator to please read the agenda.
Thank you. First, vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. Then a public comment period of 10 minutes. And then consider Whitney Street, Western Avenue intersection. And Donald Croshaw should be here with an updated design from the Western Avenue, I just forgot the intersection. Is it Whitney Street? Whitney Street.
Yeah.
Whitney Street and Western Avenue. And then around 6:30, consider fall special town meeting. You can consider the dates for setting the meeting date, opening and closing the warrant, and when you would like to look at the articles and decide your positions. And then consider Selectmen position and recommendation on the FY16 budget override. And then consideration of appointments that were attached and posted with the agenda. And then under routine business, department business, we have CM&D Director Ed Wagner will be here. We have a handout from him regarding an update on projects. And then town administrator report. And then we'll look at policy development under the Selectmen. And then review the meeting calendar, set the next meeting date, and approve the warrant. And then there's an executive session discussion regarding Board of Health contracts pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, and Suffolk Construction v. DCAM 449, Massachusetts, 444, 2007. And that's it.
Okay, anybody have any amendments to that?
Should we consider adding to the executive session? I wonder if, with Paul, what he thinks on that?
Yeah, I thought we were going to discuss two separate executive sessions, so I would suggest we first have an executive session of the board, and then depending on how that turns out, then come back into open session and vote the second executive session.
And what's the subject on the second executive session? Is that you're talking about the
Cell
settlement
towers.
discussion, cell tower settlement discussion?
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about dividing this executive session into two
Okay.
executive sessions.
And I would like to take the approval of warrant, consider the held item, and make that an open session item after the executive session.
On discussion on that, do you even have to do that? Because the way we're set up, he can approve it based on,
I think it's important
Just
to tell,
because-
I think it's
okay.
important to tell the public, we held that, I think it's important to tell the public what the resolution of that is.
Okay.
Or at least have a
Okay.
discussion about it.
okay.
So what did we decide on?
The executive session would be a vote to return to open session after that.
And then there might be a second executive session after that to deal with the cell tower litigation? That's what I'm hearing?
There is a pressing cell tower thing that should be addressed sooner.
Okay, so maybe after
Could
we
qualify.
come back to open session for that one item, we can go back into executive session?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay.
Yes, yep.
Well, I'm
But that's still
suggesting
not what Paul's talking
that
about.
there first be an executive session just with us.
Well,
There
that would
is.
still be part of the executive session, right, Paul? It would be just with us to address the Board of Health contract and complaint issues, and then there would be a portion of that meeting where the Board of Health would actually come into the meeting, but it's still our executive session.
That's, I want to vote on that separately. And I
Want to vote on
see-
whether that's an executive session separately?
Yes,
Okay.
after we have the executive session.
That's fine, I'll defer to that thought, that's,
So what I'd like to do is first have an executive session of the board, partly to discuss whether we can have an executive session
okay.
for the second one. And then depending on the results of that, then that would inform my vote as to whether or not I would vote in favor of the second executive session.
Okay. That makes sense,
And then,
somehow.
It does.
and then after both of those two would come the approval of that held item
That's right.
afterwards. And then following that, the cell tower litigation executive session, just so we're clear.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So I would move the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? And just for people who might have wondered about that and the question about executive sessions, we have 3 distinct items that may be the subject of executive session. 2 of them deal with Board of Health matters, a complaint and a contract question, and the 3rd deals with cell tower litigation that's still pending. Okay. We have public comment, and I think Nancy, you signed up first, if you want to go. Nancy Hess, our town collector.
Sorry to be on your agenda so soon after being here before, but there are a few very important things connected with the tax bill. Tax bills have gone out, and so everybody should be getting them within the next few days. And one of the significant things to note is November 1st this year falls on a weekend, which means we move to the Monday. So the taxes aren't due until November 3rd, but they must be in my office. The funds must be good by that time, or you're subject to penalties and interest. So on tax due date, November 1st, we will be extending the hours until 6 o'clock so that people have a little extra time.
Is that the 1st or the 3rd that you're
That's
extending
the
the hours?
3rd,
Okay.
which is the due date, even though it's not November 1st. And we are also adding some hours on Friday, October 31st, in the morning for people who will find that more convenient.
Will you be giving out candy?
We always give out candy, but people who come in the next week can have 2 pieces of candy.
So it's pre-Halloween, good.
But
Yes.
if they're wearing a costume, do they get a discount?
Well, it depends on the costume and whether we have to have them arrested, but, and again, I make the pitch that, especially this year, because we have new people that are doing the treasurer's job, and it's a really difficult time to find the balance and know whether or not you're going to have to borrow and all of that sort of thing. It really is helpful if people who are able can pay their tax bill early and keep our cash flow going. So I would make that pitch again. And you have multiple ways to pay it, because we do have online payments now through Unibank. So day or night, you can pay your tax bill online if you'd like. Just go to the town website. In your tax bill, there are going to be 2 stuffers this time. Ours is yellow, and that gives you all the information about the tax bills. It also gives you information about the assessor's programs for exemptions and for the tax aid, which is important. And the other stuffer is from the recycling committee, and I would really like to urge people to look this over. I think this is a fantastic program, that they've really thought outside the box on this, and I think this is going to make a significant difference in the impact on our hauling trash.
And just so people know what that program is?
Now we are allowed to bring food waste separated from our regular trash, and that takes a lot of weight out of the trash that has to be trucked to Middlebury. And the food waste, instead of having a garbage collector come around and everybody having to pay for that, they're going to the recycle center, and if you bring your garbage there and dump it there, and they give you all kinds of information about what can go in. Meat products, stuff that usually can't go in the garbage, can go in your garbage. And I'll tell you, we plugged into this, and what we do is we keep the garbage bucket on the counter, and then we put it in the freezer. So we don't have the smell and everything, and when you take it to the dump, it's frozen. You turn it inside out in the bag and get rid of it. And it's amazing the amount of weight that we have found has come out of our, and there's, we're small peanuts compared. So, we're looking for ways to save tax money. This, to me, seems like a no-brainer if you can just get people to participate. Carol was saying the other day that they signed up for so many buckets and they're not filling the buckets, and it's not going to be it's not going to justify the cost of having the people come if we can't fill those buckets. So I would urge you, read this thing carefully and participate, because I, for one, never want to see us have to go to pay-as-you-throw, and I know you have that coming up pretty soon. That's a whole another issue, and this might save us from doing that if people will just plug in. So there are two important things besides your tax bill in the envelope. Please give them the time that
Okay,
they
so
need.
pay your taxes and collect your food waste.
Right.
Okay.
Pay your taxes early and save your food waste to go separately to the transfer station.
And Nancy, are you going to stick around for our warrant, our town meeting discussion? Because if not, I have a question for you.
I can do that.
Okay.
Yep.
I'd like to add something about the food waste program.
Yeah?
There are 4 large barrels up there to deposit food waste in. We started with 4, we now have 3. Somebody took one of the barrels. So if you see one around, make sure it gets back in. It's not our property, so we're going to have to
Does it say
replace
any identifying marks on
I
this
think
barrel?
it's OES, or I can't remember the name of the company, something like that. It's a green or blue, large barrel with a flip top, and we're just going to have to replace it if it's not returned. I'm sure it was taken by accident because it was too close to the rest of the items.
Okay. All right. Chief, you're up.
Thanks. First, I want to piggyback on what our tax collector was talking about receiving tax payments on November 1st. More importantly, November 1st is All Saints' Day, and actually the Chief of Police's birthday. And I certainly would appreciate donations of Chubby Hubby ice cream, cheesecake, and maybe a trip to San Diego, if anybody's interested. But on a very, very serious note, I just wanted to come to the board and share with the residents that watch the Board of Selectmen's meeting on TV that we collectively in the region have been really impacted by house breaks. And I wanted to make it clear to the residents that we really need your help in reporting any kind of suspicious activity in neighborhoods. We've had a few different types of scam-related house breaks where we have individuals going to front doors of homes, knocking on the door, and engaging the resident in conversation while a second individual will go to the rear of the house and steal some property from the house. So any kind of suspicious activity that residents run into in the town, they really should be calling us, and I would suggest that they call 911. The second type of B&E that's occurring, breaking and entering, that is, these individuals are going to homes that are not vacant. They're knocking on doors, they're determining that no one's home, and they're going to the rear of the house and enforcing entry. So I'm really pushing residents to pay attention to their neighbors' homes. If they see somebody walking around the property, if they hear any kind of suspicious noise, if they see any suspicious activity, we really, really encourage you to call us immediately.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good advice.
Chief,
Yes?
I wonder if there's any security cameras that could be available for, I don't know, let's say $50 thereabouts, that people could put on their property. Is there anything like that that might be available, or?
Well, Elliot, because of ethical issues, we're precluded from giving names of companies, but I would suggest that you go online, and you certainly can research that, and there's several different security companies that offer that type of security, and I think that would be a great idea, actually. And thanks for bringing that up.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, and we are up to Mr. Crushaw and the Western Avenue folks.
Thank you.
Are you here on your own, or do you have your committee? It's just you?
As far as I know.
Okay, that's fine, great.
Pass these down.
I'm here.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Oh, thanks, yeah. Okay, so we were just handed some minutes and a correspondence that Mr. Crushaw had forwarded earlier.
Included in your packets were the traffic safety votes
Yes.
from a few weeks ago.
We did see that.
And the latest McMahon design were in the
Yep.
packets. And then this is what was provided by Mr. Crushaw today.
Okay,
Well, good evening.
the floor is
The
yours.
Western Avenue Intersections Committee met last Wednesday, and the minutes in your packet reflect, firstly, the background to the McMahon's design. And their design for Whitney Street intersection with Western Avenue is for 2 lanes separated by a median island. And the first design that they presented, the sides of the island consisted of mountable granite curbing. So, with help from the police department, Ed McMahon, and other members of the committee, a test was done, videos were taken, and the test was rapidly stopped because chaos happened very quickly, because the school bus couldn't readily get into Whitney Street. Cars didn't know which lane to enter. There were no signs, and fortunately the police stopped the test. So one of the concerns was, from McMahon, was that the test had been done with cones and barrels, and that the barrels in themselves were obstructions. Well, when I was last in front of the committee here, the Board of Selectmen, we did discuss having Schofield set out the surveyed design that McMahon had produced, and with help from the town administrator, Schofield was employed, if I remember, for $1,500 and did the staking out of the intersection as designed by McMahon, which was important because then it could be seen to be related to their design. So a second test was done, this time without barrels, but with cones on the island, and we had the benefit of the fire department, Sean Killeen, driving fire truck number 1, and a gentleman from Medfield giving us the use of his professional driver and a 53-foot tractor-trailer. And it was readily apparent that neither of those 2 large vehicles could actually use the intersection without running over the island and the cones. And one of the problems was the fire truck couldn't even then go north on Western Avenue without backing up, and going south it entered into the wrong lane. So a lot of this was shown on the first video as the problems with the island. So what happened was we did meet with McMahon, who was present at the second test, and came to a meeting with Sherborn Traffic Safety Committee and Western Avenue, and we explained to them the problems with the design. And as a result, our town administrator wrote a letter to McMahon, to their vice president and chief engineer, setting out the complaints that Western Avenue Committee and Sherborn Traffic Safety Committee had indicated. And it took a long time to get a response from McMahon. So I called them up and said, have you had the letter and are you going to respond? So they then got in touch with Town Administrator Williams, and a meeting was arranged in the town hall, which was attended by Ed and myself and Tom Ermston. And at that meeting, they suggested they would amend the island, and their suggestion was what you see on the sketch in front of you, which is to do away with the mountable curbing on the median island and have a concrete toe to the island which consists of stippled concrete. And the island is now at pavement level and surrounded by yellow lines for the full length of the island. But otherwise, the design is as before. And one of the significant failures with the design, although they now show an arrow on the pavement showing you where to come in and where to exit Whitney Street, there's still no real signage. And that is the problem, because this amended design will still have the problem that large vehicles will have to cross the island. And Western Avenue Intersections Committee met last Wednesday, as I said, and we came up with a motion which summarized in the discussion, which I won't read out to you because we have 15 minutes, but the end result is that no action be taken and to support the CM&D director to improve the Western Avenue Whitney intersection at his discretion. The other thing that we did discuss was the Western Avenue Brook Street intersection, which McMahon also came up with a design, which was essentially based on having slotted pavement markers down the center of the Western Avenue, one way in one direction, two way in the other, and then having the curve of Western Avenue clearly marked with dotted lines, and then flashing LED chevrons installed further north on traffic coming down Western Avenue would see these flashing LED signs and show some caution. Unfortunately, or otherwise, Ms. Carol McGarry didn't like the idea of flashing LED signs near her house, although her wall was the one that was often impacted by trucks or cars coming down Western Avenue and losing control. So what we did discuss at the meeting last Wednesday was that the two existing chevrons on the stone wall are certainly visible, but we did discuss that the CM&D director placed two more chevrons further up the Western Avenue where the flashing chevrons would have been. So the motion was that two new chevrons be placed on the northwestern side of Western Avenue at the CM&D's director's discretion, but no other action be taken. What I do want to just bring to your attention is that Western Avenue issue started about 15 years ago, and we've had some success in that the planning board was very supportive, and we met often at the special meetings at which Odessa attended. And we negotiated many improvements. One of the big ones was placing the Jersey barriers in the, or on the Odessa property to try and dissuade 9-car carriers coming up Western Avenue and then getting into Odessa. So that has helped. Some 9-car carriers are still coming, but the other big thing that was came out of those meetings of Western Avenue citizens and the planning board, and obviously again with Board of Selectmen and town meetings and advisory, was that Odessa would make a contribution in lieu of 24/7 police details on Western Avenue, which the Board of Selectmen can use at their discretion, but it worked out at about $19,000 a year. So if you look at your other item in the package, as of 2012, there was $57,533 received in 2010, 11, and 12. McMahon's final invoice had been paid, so there was a balance from a prior articles from town meeting of $7,900. So there were funds available in Treasury at that time of $65,516. So since then, another $38,039 should have been received. So as we are not recommending that $45,000 be spent on the two intersections, there should be more than $100,000 in free cash, which can be used at your discretion. Planning board did always recommend firstly used on Western Avenue and then on West and other intersections in Sherborn, but it always came to the Board of Selectmen's final decision. So I feel that we have served a useful purpose over the years, and I think the Western Avenue Intersections Committee has completed its task, and I would suggest that we be sunsetted. And I've enjoyed working with not only the Western Avenue Committee members over the years, but many boards of selectmen. Paul de Rensis has been supportive from back in 1999, I think it was, and other boards of selectmen members have been supportive. Advisory, 3 town meetings, and certainly the police department. I must comment that when we did the second test, there was a policeman standing on the end of the island, and that was needed to make sure that the traffic coming up from the south would know which lane to enter. So without signs, that was the problem. So thank you.
Thank you. And Don, I just want to comment, I know you have been personally involved in Western Avenue traffic issues for a lot longer even than this committee.
Right.
Back when Odessa first moved into that
Right.
property, you were a leader on that, and thank you for that
thank
service
you.
and that leadership.
Thank you. And if you want to look at the detailed drawings, I do have them.
I guess we have some questions from the
Oh, sure.
public. Elliot?
I've told you from the beginning, Brook Street and Western Avenue should be a 3-way stop. All you've got to do is put up 3 stop signs, 3 other signs saying all-way stop ahead, and what it's going to cost you, $500. Do it, and you'll see that that will solve your problem there. Now, back to Whitney Street. Whitney Street and Western Avenue should be a T intersection, similar to what we now have at Woodland Street and Washington Street, and many other intersections, where you come out at a right angle. And you don't have any stupid islands for trucks to roll over on, and for the garden club to put up flowers that grow up where you can't see over them. I just came through the intersection at Lake Street and Farm Road on my way here tonight, and there are asters growing about 4 feet tall. You come up to the end of Lake Street at Farm Road, you look toward Dover, you can't see a damn thing except asters. And they should be cut down, that island should be out of there, and that should be a straight across 90-degree intersection. And I'm sure the historic committees will say, oh, it's always been, but we're talking traffic safety. So I've been saying this for many years, as long as you've been around. Whitney Street should be a 90-degree intersection, 1 lane of traffic approach, and signage, of course, telling people they're coming to a T intersection. And that should do it, and it shouldn't cost you more than, I don't know, $3,000 perhaps.
Thanks, Elliot, for those suggestions. That's,
And you'll hear me say this again and again and again.
okay. Thanks, Elliot, for
Well,
that.
I just want to thank Don. I know that he's worked tirelessly on this for many, many years. I think you've helped establish a great relationship between the town and Odessa as a result of many of your efforts. I think that you've also provided good ways to look at how to mitigate traffic issues throughout the town by many other folks here. So you really helped us get smarter about how to deal with these challenges. So again, you know, it's a thankless job, but thanks.
Do we have a motion to dissolve the committee?
So moved.
If that's a
We
selectmen
can do
committee,
that,
we can
Tim.
do that? David?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I would move to sunset the Western Avenue Intersection Committee.
Second? Okay, so any further discussion? All in favor? To accept their report in Sunset. How's that?
Perfect, I accept that amendment, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks again, Don.
All right, we are
Can I
on to-
just thank Don and all the members of the committee for volunteering for your service and for the years that you've put in. This community runs on volunteers. It's always a wonderful thing to have people come forward and be willing to put in time to try and make the town better. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So now we're on to the next item, which is to consider a special fall town meeting based on a petition. David, you have the information on that?
Yes, there was a petition that was received, well, actually, let's go back. At the 2014 annual town meeting, there was an article that was passed to expand the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5 members. That had to be signed off on by the Attorney General?
It was the legislature.
Oh, it had to go to the legislature, right. So once it left the legislature, it had to come back here for a vote in order to hold the election in the spring for those seats. The original 2014 town meeting vote would have to be ratified at least 60 days before the annual town meeting. The other alternative was to for a petition of approximately 200 signatures, which were made and turned in on, I believe it was Election Day, to call for a special town meeting to be held within 45 days under the statute. So since then, the signatures have been certified, and we have a special town meeting that we need to consider what date we want to use, when we want to open and close the warrant, how many articles you want to let into that special town meeting. And a number of people have turned in warrant articles. So I have a number of those warrant articles right now. But and I also have 2 or 3 proposed timelines. I don't know which ones you want to.
Why don't you distribute what you have?
Okay. October, a timeline of October 20th was included in your packets.
Mhm.
This is a timeline of October 14th.
Okay. That's great. You get 3 of them, Peter.
Right.
I also did one up of October 30th, which was a day we had originally kicked around when we were posting the agenda, with the agenda item being consideration of a special town meeting. So that October 30th date had been kicked around, but that was before the petition had been turned in. So it turns out the October 30th date is past the 45 days. So to be within the 45 days, it looks like October 20th or 14th.
Okay.
Is there any flexibility in the 45 days? Or how can one get flexibility in the 45 days?
I mean, the options are to go ahead, if you can't meet the 45 days, there's another process in the statute that allows them to petition again if the selectmen were refusing to set a special town meeting. If they were, you would run the risk of another petition going out there, collecting 100 signatures, being turned in, and calling for a special town meeting, and trying to get that pulled off before your October 30th date.
Yeah, I think the short answer is the statutory standard.
Yeah, I just asked because I can't do either of those dates, but
I mean, the reality is if you didn't do it, or for some reason the board couldn't act and you couldn't meet the 45 days, the backup is for the petitioner to do that petition process to call another one.
Excuse me, is the second round only 100 signatures?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a couple of decisions. I think you kind of laid out the decisions we had, David?
Yes, on the
It's sort of a list of things
on the
we're
agenda, I mean,
supposed to consider.
the first thing we have to do is choose one of those dates that works.
Well, I
but
think the first thing you have to do is choose to accept the petition and
vote
vote
accept the
to
petition.
schedule a town meeting, right?
So
I think-
moved.
Okay,
Second.
that was an easy one, good. Any
Well,
further
I'm staying away
discussion?
the process, I just know I'm going to be
Yeah.
out of pocket.
We received the petition. We should be scheduling a special town meeting.
I agree. My only discussion item is, it's unfortunate that we received a petition. I think in most places, there's a conversation about a fall town meeting. I think, unfortunately, we're going to find that having to schedule a fall town meeting on short order is going to mean that some things that could have come onto this agenda, if there was more time, might not be able to come onto this agenda. It's really, I know you work a lot of places, Paul. I mean, my experience is that there's always a discussion first, and that a petition is more of a curative approach rather than the civil, considerate approach of talking it over with the boards in town in terms of what might be on that town meeting and when it could be scheduled. I think we all knew there was going to be a town meeting this fall. We were waiting for some information from the government task force and others about what they might want to put on that agenda, but I think because of the way this was handled, our schedule has been forced, so it is what it is.
Yeah, there are a number of items that you may want to hold till annual town meeting or go ahead and add them on. But do you want to deal with the date first and then
Yeah, we
look
should,
at
we
the
should
articles?
do the whole schedule, yeah, absolutely.
What's the outside limit, the 22nd?
24th, I
24th.
think.
There was pretty much from the 14th, from the 15th to the 24th,
15th
there
to
were
the
only a
24th.
couple of dates that
All right.
seemed to
Well,
work.
from the 14th to the 24th. I think.
From October 14th to
Yeah, I think
October
the 14th is the
24th.
schedule you came up with.
All right.
I think David has figured out that the 14th actually
Is the
works
earliest.
to get, well, not only the earliest, but it also is a date that works to get all the things done on a schedule that they could be done on.
Advisory,
Well, it's really pushing it.
oh, it's
It
really
is,
tight.
It is,
Yeah.
and that we can get get the town high school,
Right, the date, the
the
meeting.
DS high school,
Yeah.
as a meeting.
Yeah.
The turnaround is the, the problem with advisory. They've scheduled a meeting or a hearing on the 1st, so they
Mhm.
got to get that mailing out, that notification out 5 days before that.
Which
Right.
looks doable based on this.
Right, and again, then once they create their report before the town meeting, they have to get it out, I think that's
Well,
5 days as well.
Okay.
when picking the date, do we think that the briefer time frame influences at all what gets on there? Because here's an opportunity to deal with other items at this town meeting, and the question is to the extent that the timing might
Well,
reduce taking advantage of that opportunity.
I don't want to speak for advisory, but on the 14th, they would certainly appreciate less articles to consider.
I mean,
And then
the comments I had were they would appreciate fewer articles regardless.
Right, but if we end up with more articles, certainly a later date is going to be more palatable and easier to deal with, but, the 14th is really tight for them already, so. I mean, they're the ones that are
And
going to
what
take.
time frame is in the
time.
best interest of the citizens to evaluate what they're going to be asked to vote on? I mean, that's the fundamental question at the end of the day.
Well, I think it partly depends on what's on the agenda. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of surprises on
Right.
the agenda at this point, at least. I mean, if there was a significant article that was not an expected article, maybe that would change things. Again, our schedule was forced, Peter. We're trying to get a
Right.
schedule together and I know unfortunately, or maybe
Yeah, my
fortunately.
situation, yeah.
Your situation, but
That's all right.
we do think it's important to have as many other town officials and to have it in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
high
yeah,
school, if possible. And the 14th somehow was the date that emerged from that. So,
What night is the 14th?
it's a Tuesday,
It's a Tuesday?
yeah.
And when is Columbus Day? Is that the day before?
The Monday, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my issue is I'm going off to Parents' Weekend
Mhm.
to see my daughter, whom I'm very eager to see. And I'm leaving that Wednesday and coming back the following Wednesday. So that week, I'm gone. And a number of people have asked me specifically if I was going to this town meeting and want to see me there. So if I'm going to go to this town meeting, it has to be after the
Well, I think the 14th was the date that you
14th
said
works.
worked for you.
Yes, 14 works.
Right. Okay. And it's legal? It's in other words, it meets the legal requirements.
So you have, you have the selectmen schedules, and then you have the auditorium schedules, so that's what we've been trying to.
Right, and that's what you kind of coordinated, right?
Is the 14th available for an auditorium?
Yes. We've already booked the 14th, the 20th, and the 30th.
Okay.
The other dates, either the auditorium was booked, or it wasn't working
Okay.
for other people's
Yeah.
schedule.
So, I mean, from my perspective, go with whatever works.
Are people looking for the schedule? I think there are a couple of extras here, if
I,
somebody wants them.
I just fear the hastiness to get to the 14th. But from a personal perspective, I expect not to be at either of the dates of the 14th or the 20th. That's why I asked about the possibility of pushing it out.
Right.
But I guess we can't do that, so. Enough said.
Okay. We have any comments on other dates that we have to set here? Open and close the warrant date. And I guess those are the only dates we're responsible for, David?
Yeah, if you decide the meeting date and when
Okay.
you want to open and close the warrant, which you could open and close it tonight if you were just doing the one petition article.
And so when we open the warrant, what goes in it, given that we don't have drafts of any articles at this stage of the game? Basically,
Well, we
it's
had
just
articles coming in,
placeholders?
we had articles coming in today, so it's like a tentative warrant you're holding. Remember that checklist I had?
Sure, yeah.
It's just
NOI
placeholders.
type of thing, yeah.
Just placeholders, and then what you would actually sign would be those articles.
And when would we sign that? The 25th on this
Well,
schedule? Oh,
this-
the 26th.
But we could do it today, or we could do it at a special meeting, some
You could
morning.
hold a meeting, if you wanted to hold the warrant open for a week, you could do it the 25th or 26th. Come in, brief meeting, close it, or vote to close it at that time,
Right.
and then sign the warrant that's completed.
Which shows the wording of the articles vetted by legal counsel and all that.
Right. Or you could vote tonight the dates that it would open and close, instead of re-adjourning to close an open warrant.
I'm not following you, David. Are you saying we could open it and close it tonight?
You could open and close it tonight, or you could vote for the warrant to be open the 19th through the 25th, and then you wouldn't have to meet on the 25th to close the warrant, because you've already voted the
Gotcha.
closing date.
So we should probably vote a closing date no matter what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So what's the, Corey, you have a
Yes,
comment?
I apologize, I must have missed an email somewhere, because I was asked about my availability for the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, and it might even have been the 23rd, I'm not sure, and I said I was available. Does it have to be on a Tuesday, because I was planning to be out of town the week of Columbus Day?
Well, we've got a lot of schedules to juggle. I mean, this is part of the problem with having this statutory process. It's not a-
did send you something on the 14th, so I apologize.
No, I may well have not seen it. Because the last conversation I just remember having was the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, or the 23rd.
Right. And what worked with them was the 20th, so that was the only thing we were.
You mean the 14th? Oh, of those 4
20th.
days, the 20th was the closest that we could get.
I mean, any of the dates we came up with, there was at least one selectman that wasn't, had a conflict, or that was going to be.
I think Most of the days, there were 2 selectmen that had conflicts. Some
Yeah, right.
days, there were 3 selectmen that had.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So, I mean, it was a
the
tough.
Board of Selectmen should be at this.
Well, the moderator should be at the town meeting, too.
So should the moderator, yeah.
Yeah.
We can't have it before the Columbus Day weekend.
I don't think you have time to
No.
even conduct the hearings. I mean, there are also, advisory schedule is very tight. There are people who are on vacation and people who have holidays and things like that in that time period.
If Corey is saying the moderator is not available on the 14th, that's,
So are you saying the moderator is not available on the 14th?
I could cut things short and be back for the 15th, but I'd be in transit on the 14th.
See, and the 15th doesn't really, is probably just as good as any day between the 15th and the 22nd, so that doesn't,
just as bad as any other.
just as bad, whatever.
Yeah, I'm gone.
So the 14th is the only day that 2 selectmen can be there. In this time, 45 time,
Right, that's
45-day
right,
time frame,
yeah.
is what I'm getting, in availability of the school, right?
The
That's right.
20th?
And you can't have a moderator, so that puts us back to the question I asked him.
Well, there is a process that you could go beyond the 45 days, but,
What's that process?
well, we've done it in other towns. The purpose of the petition was to call a special town meeting. And if you are all in agreement to call a special town meeting, which I think the vote was already taken, we're going to do that. And we called it, let's say, for October 30th, and we did it with the consent of the proponents. And you need the consent also of the town clerk.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody consents to that, then it usually works. Nobody really objects to the date, once they know that there is going to be a date. At least that's my experience in other towns. There is a risk that somebody who wasn't a proponent would want to do something earlier, but given that that's a fair amount of work, and given the fact that there's going to be a town meeting, and given the fact that if a new petition came in, we're going to have conflict it out. At the end of the day, it's everybody's common interest to get a quorum and to get enough people there.
Mhm.
So if we're picking dates where people can't make it, that's a warning sign to everybody that there may not be a quorum at the town meeting. So you're better off setting a town meeting where that it works for as many people as possible.
What day of the week is the 30th?
It's a Thursday.
That's the Thursday,
Corey, did I check your availability on the 30th? Is that what I
Yeah.
done?
I
Okay.
was okay.
okay. That was the first date, which everybody, I think, was
Right.
potentially available. George, you have a comment or question?
What's the process to not do it within 45 days?
Well, I think you just heard Paul explain what the process was.
Well, I didn't hear.
Well, you
Would
could,
like to explain?
he was saying you could basically mutually agree with the petitioner and the town clerk, I think that's what he was saying.
Which petitioner?
Who's the petitioner?
There was 242
Well-
signatures turned in, so which petitioner?
Well, I talked to the clerk and she said it was you. As the first name traditionally the town has accepted, the first name on a petition as the petitioner. So,
But as far as with the special petition sheets, unlike your regular petitions for putting an article on a town meeting, where there is the one and you need the 10 signatures, on this one here, each page, it's a state form, and those are numbered from 1 to 40.
right.
And they're multiple sheets, they're not numerical, that this was page 1, page 2.
Right.
So which sheet becomes the number 1 signature on it?
I talked to the clerk and I tried to sort out who was the petitioner because there's got to be one person or group that goes to the town clerk and works on the wording, and then gets the copies of those petitions to circulate.
Well, the wording was already in the article that went before the state legislature, and was signed by the governor.
Yeah, I mean, are we trying to solve a problem here, or are we just making noise? Because
No,
I think we
I'm
need, I think we
I
need
know,
to
I-
solve the problem of the date. I
I
mean,
think she's saying that you could make the argument that you need to get agreement with all 200 petitioners.
you could make that argument, but Paul did not make that
No,
argument
he-
when he explained, and the question was, what's the process? So,
Right.
you know, I mean, that's fine.
I'm
If
not
if
making an argument either, I would just
Okay,
ask
well, I mean, if you think
who
that's
is the
if you
one?
think that's a real risk, we can just vote the The 14th or the 20th. I mean, those are the other dates we had in play,
Then do it,
you know, so.
then do it.
Well, if we vote the 14th, we've already heard from the moderator that inconveniences her.
Here on the 15th.
But that's not one of the 2 dates we're going to vote, George.
Well, then change it. I mean, you didn't get the cooperation from the petitioners because 2 of your selectmen opposed the issue that's currently going before the town meeting.
Okay, that's our prerogative, George. That
Yes,
still
it
doesn't,
is.
that still doesn't
It
mean
was
you
your
don't
prerogative.
discuss the date.
It was the petitioner's prerogative to put it in the date it got. So
Well,
deal with
and
it.
this is the outcome.
Deal with it.
We are going to deal with it. So I guess I'll move, we accept the 14th as the date. That seems to be what we're being forced into. And I'm sorry, Corey.
We had checked dates that week. I don't know what
I,
how we got it the 14th.
aside from being told that having the 2 out of 3 selectmen is more important than having a moderator, aside from that question, I think the fact that it's the night after a 3-day weekend is probably, to Paul's point about getting a quorum present for a special town meeting, I think having it the night after a long weekend is problematic on a quorum question.
There's no law that says that 2 selectmen have to be there.
I'm pretty sure none of the selectmen would be happy to be there, George, the way we're being addressed now. I don't know why this can't be a civil discussion
It is a
with all the
civil
anger.
discussion.
No,
You're just dragging your
there's
feet
not.
around.
We're not dragging our feet,
We're not
George.
dragging our feet,
You're
George.
being ridiculous on this,
You are
George.
dragging.
Absolutely
You know.
ridiculous.
George, I think you know that I did email you and Kitty and asked
Yes,
if you
did.
would give consideration to handing that petition in later.
And we attempted to get that consideration and it was rejected.
Okay,
Excuse me, because I am part of this. I am the one that turned them in.
right.
Let me explain. Yes, I did hear from both Kitty and George Tuesday afternoon, just before I came to work the elections at about 11:45, that yes, there had been a question as to whether we could hold off, or I could hold off turning them in. And my decision was that when I got those signatures, and I got the majority of them, there were other people getting signatures, but I got the majority of them. People asked me, well, when are you going to, when is this going to be? And I said, well, hopefully this will be turned in Monday and Tuesday. It wasn't for me to say, no, I'm not going to turn in those signatures, because they weren't my signatures. People signed that expecting that petition to be turned in.
Well, it would have been
wasn't-
turned in, Susan, but that's fine. I appreciate you were in a tough spot on that.
It
and
wasn't for me to decide that
That's
they're not going to
fine.
be
Well,
turned in today.
but you made that decision, so that's
Yeah, well,
understood.
I had to. I had to make that decision. They weren't my signatures not to turn in.
That's fine. So we're still where we were
And-
before.
And as far as being civil, I'm being very civil.
Oh,
And I attend all your meetings, the majority
I'm
of the
not
selectmen's meetings.
accusing you of not being civil,
I
Susan.
know, I know.
Okay,
But I attend the majority of your meetings.
you do.
I haven't heard any discussion that there was ever talk of a fall town meeting. I only heard the mention of October 30th, about an hour and a half after I saw Mr. Caruso at the post office, of which he didn't sign the petition, by the way. But
My
it
prerogative.
was only an hour and a half after I saw him that I even heard mention that there was a possibility of an October 30th meeting. You've never discussed it before in an open meeting.
We've only had one meeting since the petition was approved. We
Well,
didn't know when it was going to be
no,
approved.
You said earlier that had there been open communication with people in the city.
Oh, yes.
But you haven't discussed it, any of your meetings prior to the petition that
We
you were
knew
ever
that
thinking.
government study was going to come up with some articles. If they could have gone on a fall town meeting, we also knew this was going to come in
You could have
as an
put that
article.
At a selectmen's meeting, that you were waiting for them to decide before you decided to have a town meeting or not. Anyways, it's done. So,
All right, well, I think we haven't really moved the ball any, have we?
No, it's too bad people don't think we do a good job, but that's all right.
All right.
I mean, we have a motion on the floor by Paul to make the, or by you, by the date of the 14th.
Well, I can withdraw that motion if there's another option. I just don't see what the other option is.
Well, I don't either.
I want to go see my daughter. And I know the town meeting's important, and I want to attend the town meeting, so I would like to do both. And the only day that I can do that is either the 14th or the 24th or 25th, which is the other end, and that doesn't work. someone couldn't make it the 24th or the 25th.
I think we don't have the room on the 24th.
We have the
I think
20th,
Paul, I think what
21st, and
I think
22nd.
what you're hearing, Paul, is that even though I'm sure people do appreciate the conflict you're in and would like to have you at town meeting, I think the moderator's schedule is pretty difficult. And if you would consider the 20th, I think we could probably get that passed.
But he won't be there and I won't be there, that's all right. You'll be all by yourself, so,
Yeah, that sounds like fun, doesn't it?
yeah.
Well,
But what about the 15th?
The 15th.
Yeah.
Are you able to make the 15th?
I don't think that the meeting place is available.
David, do you know if the meeting place is available on the 15th?
I can't remember. I think they were booked up pretty much.
Can't we do it at Pine Hill?
The 15th at Pine Hill? We have had town meetings at Pine Hill before.
No, we've had caucuses.
No, we've had special town meetings.
We've had special town meetings.
Yeah, the
At
second-
Pine Hill.
Yeah, the second day of 2 meetings ago.
Yeah, when we bought the Price property, that was at Pine Hill.
Right.
Well, it seems to me you have to have the moderator at the meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of.
Now we're making progress.
Yeah.
So
I think that's true.
We're on the 10-yard line.
I would suggest the 15th then, because maybe, I mean, I'll make an effort to try and change plans to be there on the 15th.
Okay.
So the 15th.
Corey, I think, had said before that the 15th was something she could work around.
Yeah, I can cut short and I can do the 15th.
All right, so 2 people are cutting short, which is too bad. But I guess that works.
And then we'll just find a venue.
We'll find a venue,
But
presumably
are you
Pine Hill.
available?
I'll be available.
And
And Peter
I don't,
doesn't
I
expect to be
doubt
available.
very much that I'll be available.
But that's not a problem we can solve with a new date, really, so.
Right. Anytime in that kind of 2-week time frame,
I
2+
just want to make
weeks.
it clear, I can't guarantee that I'll be there. I have to talk to my boss.
Okay.
my boss is going to be a grandchild that's going to be born sometime in that time frame, so I have to.
Far more important than the town meeting.
That way.
So do we have a motion on the 15th?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on the 15th?
I think that the motion should be contingent on availability of someplace to meet.
Well, that'd be good.
It would be good to find a place to meet before you set the date.
We've got
Lawn
Pine-
at the Sherborn
We've got
Inn.
Pine Hill, we got
Sherborn
Community
Inn,
Center, we got
there's no
the
music.
lawn at the Sherborn Inn, we've got behind the fire station.
Yeah, I don't want to make the motion contingent, because I want to have this done. And if we have a contingent, and there's a problem, then we have no town meeting. And then we got to wait till whenever we have another meeting, and then we have to have another discussion, and we've gone a week or two down the road, and we don't have a date.
What do you want, 10th? Good. 15th's fine?
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor of the 15th? Okay, all right, good. Well, this is town government, hard at work. We have to consider now
The
the
open and
dates for
close.
the warrant. And I think, David, you had suggested opening and closing it today, but I still haven't seen even what articles are out there. Do you have
Right.
that?
In the packet, I had listed the articles that were kind of on the...
Well, those aren't the ones that were received today, though.
No.
You said you got some today.
Is that on the sheet that you, of the top?
The articles I received, the actual wording of today were the assessing article and the planning board article, which I
Oh,
had
good,
listed
okay.
on the packet.
That's great.
So the ones we have are still the ones listed here.
Okay, and Nancy,
Not
I'm
new
sorry, the
ones.
reason I asked if you were going to be sticking around is I know you had a lot of interest in getting the town collector article on it, and it does not seem to be a controversial article. It just ran into the legislative schedule last year. Is that something that you would put on for this special? Or ask us to put on? Because I think you'd have support for that.
I think we should keep the town meeting simple.
It would be my preference, because we put so much work into this, that we have more time to lay the groundwork before we put it before before the vote, and I don't think it's going to make a significant difference. We can still move forward with the planning so that we're ready when it's
Okay, I
accepted.
mean, your call, as far as I'm concerned, so
I think
that makes
I would
sense.
prefer that we do this at the regular town meeting.
And I would say if we're holding on that article, you may as well hold on changing the treasurer from elected to appointed and do the same vetting
Why would you
process
do
at the
that
same
now?
time. Just holding it, just trying to cut back the warrant.
I don't know, we have language on that here, and that's a
We
complicated.
don't have language, well, it's a simple language, it's just.
But isn't that one we'd want to resolve before a time of election?
Yes,
So it
yes.
seems
If
to
you
me
don't do it
that's-
at the special town meeting, you'll have people running for an
That's
office
right.
that may
So
not
I
be
think
there.
that's wasted energy.
But you
So-
do understand that if you change that to appointed at the town meeting, and the election is in May, the election becomes invalid, so you get the same result. You don't have to then wait for that person to serve out his term. If you look at the statute, I believe it
No,
is,
I get that, but you still could have people running and all of that.
That's a lot of wasted energy.
So I prefer to see it sooner than later. It's not a new issue that has, and we're all having to scramble here.
Well,
It might not gain success.
It is ready as far as the article that would go on the warrant.
The article is ready?
Yeah.
Does it have your support, David?
As the treasurer, yeah, I support having an appointed treasurer.
Okay. And is that the only piece of it? I thought there was a larger piece to this article.
No, we won't be able to flush that out. I mean, ideally, what I was thinking was a finance director / treasurer. But I don't think that, government finance still wants to look at that, and I don't think we could pull the
Yeah,
trigger.
Is that potentially for the spring?
Maybe, I mean, yeah, they're discussing things. I've had some talks with other people, and like the advisory group that I was using for advising me on like the transition of the treasurer's office. That's the model that we came up with and discussed, was a finance director head / treasurer. At some point, you would fold in the collector, change that from elected to appointed, and you'd have a finance director / treasurer collector. And then break out the treasurer collector position as its own, and then you'd be left with a finance director overseeing treasurer collector office, town accountant office, payroll, accounts payable.
Could I
everything.
suggest that the discussion of particular articles be deferred? But right now, the issue is, are we going to open the warrant, close the warrant without allowing any articles other than the petitioned article? Or are we going to allow a week, let's say, and I think the proposal was open the warrant today, leave it open until the 18th?
We have wording for all of those.
We have two articles that have wording, and I think we have language on,
Well, we're not voting on, we're not deciding the wording tonight.
Understood.
Other than it helps us understand
well,
what
at
we're
least you
dealing
know
with.
you're not
Yeah, I get that.
placeholding something that's not going to be there. There's such a short schedule that
No, I'm
you don't
saying,
want to have gaps on there that.
Well,
saying we have wording, we have the citizen petition wording, we have the wording from council on changing elected treasurer from elected to appointed. The veteran exemption article from the 2014 annual town meeting, that wording was already done. The assessing article, we received the wording on that a few days ago, and then we received the planning board article regarding Brewfest today.
yeah, and I think the only other, you'd have to, if we go with the change elected treasurer from elected to appointed, and that passes, then I think we'd have to put in as a placeholder and have teed up personnel administration plan change, because then you have to take that person and put them on this Appendix A.
Mr. Chairman?
So,
Oh,
If
when the
that-
discussion appears done, George, I'll
Well, I
ask for
understand,
audience
but I'd
comment.
like to add something to the
Well, great,
discussion.
I'll call on you when the discussion appears done.
Well, it might be too late for the discussion, you might be saving yourself some time.
Paul, what are you saying?
I haven't seen the wording of either the planning board article, which I'm sure
just got it,
is
basically.
fine, it just got handed to me.
Yeah.
And while nor the change in the treasurer, nor the assessor's article. So, and I'm sure everybody's done a great job on their articles, but I'm not comfortable putting those on the warrant right now, if that's where you're heading with this. That's why what I'm trying to suggest is, that why don't we move to open the warrant and close the warrant, let's say, a week from now.
Then you're meeting
Then at
again.
our next meeting, we then,
I think we'd have to have a special meeting next week to sign that, because at that point, people start, or I guess we'll have an October 4th meeting. I don't know if Peter will be there for that, or you're...
I think I will.
Okay, all right, so we could sign it on the 4th, or we could sign it next week if we
Right.
did that.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
your first
okay.
vote is including the warrant, articles. That's not your support of the articles.
That's
Understood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I like
But,
Paul's idea of leaving it
the
open.
schedule's still pretty compressed, so I
Yeah.
think if we were going to do that, Paul, we would need to have our hearing pretty soon after that, too. The advisory hearing is on the 1st.
right, I understand, but I just haven't read these, so I like to see what.
All right,
what
so
the-
we're going to need to schedule a meeting, I think, next Thursday for purposes of signing the warrant and taking a vote on whether we're going to support the various articles. Or sometime next week. I don't even know if Thursday's available. I'm not sure I have Thursday available.
But also give people a chance to, if there are draft articles around, they should be circulated amongst the board and anybody who wants to see
Understood. I
them.
think David just gave them to us because he just got them, so.
The planning board and the assessing ones were the only ones that, had details that included in it that we wouldn't know about.
So I asked for a placeholder for the personnel administration plan changes.
All right, so if
In
we
the
leave,
same-
So right now, there's a tentative list of about 7 articles. And I guess my overall comment on that is that I think this town meeting should be simple and not loaded up with all of this. It costs money and time to have a special town meeting. People have to come out, and if they're going to sit and listen to zoning articles and articles about interest rates, I don't know what it is, so this isn't a comment about it. I just think it may be better to focus the town meeting on things that absolutely need to be done now,
we
rather
can
than
have that
starting to
discussion.
load it up.
We're not going to put the articles on today. We can have that discussion at our next meeting, whatever that is.
Yeah, we're dealing with a list of potential articles to be on the warrant that we close next week.
But we don't have to, we
right?
don't have to do that. If we're not closing the warrant today, we don't have to do that.
That's right.
So then, why don't I make a motion, we open the warrant today, and we close it, when do you recommend?
What's next week? 25th is Thursday?
Yeah, the 25th.
Mhm.
Could you do like an 8 o'clock meeting on Thursday? The 25th?
Thursday evening, you're talking about?
No, the morning. There's
Well, if
another
it doesn't
item.
close until that day, we can't do a meeting that morning and have a
Right,
meeting.
right. You'd have to close it the day before.
I can't do Friday, the morning of the 26th.
I can't do that Friday.
The Thursday morning,
I can do Thursday night.
Either Thursday night, not Thursday morning? Is that what you're saying?
and I'm only saying Thursday morning because we're running into another issue.
Why not have a regular meeting Thursday, the 25th, at 6 o'clock?
Well,
Do
Okay.
you have an issue?
yeah, in the treasurer's office, we're going to be doing a state aid anticipation note so we can get the paving done in this year.
And that would need to be signed when?
That would need to be signed in front of the clerk on the morning of the 25th during her office hours, between 8 and...
Why during your office hours?
So she can witness the signatures. It doesn't have to be a meeting called to order, but she needs...
But
We-
could
we
we do
need
that
2
that
people.
night?
Why don't we do that that night and ask the clerk to come that night? Is that not possible?
I don't think it was, but let me check.
Because if we can have a meeting the 25th, it's a Thursday night, it's a regular meeting night, then we can open the warrant, let people work on whatever they,
Yes, people can come here and comment, all that sort of thing as well,
yeah,
right?
and give me a chance to read what is being submitted by the planning board, by the assessors, by whoever is submitting whatever.
So I think I think George had some comment about this scheduling, so George, it's still relevant, you want to add it?
It seems to me that there's only two ways you can convert a treasurer's position from elected to appointed.
Is this going to be the substance of this article, because then we don't need to talk about it?
It's not going to discuss it.
Okay.
One is to put it on a ballot under Chapter 41, Section 1B, which does not provide for any adjustments to the position. It just converts it from elected to appointed. That has to be done at the same election that the officer that's being appointed would have run. It means you can't do it again until next spring.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is to get a special act. That means that what goes on the ballot, or on the warrant rather, for the town meeting, will be to authorize someone to go to the legislature. So you're not going to accomplish much.
It still could be a process if it doesn't get done
It's
quickly.
going to be a long process.
Yeah.
You can start it, but it's not going to be, you're not going to get an elected treasurer, an appointed treasurer until it goes through the legislature.
Depends on how good our legislators are. Well, depends on how good our legislators are.
They move quickly on
They
this
can move
other one.
quickly when they need to.
Well, they may be going away, you see, but I don't think they come back into session until January 1st.
Yeah, but that's still time.
Well, you can do it then.
It's still a process, just like
I
expanding
think
the
at this
board.
point, we haven't seen a proposal, we haven't seen language, but we don't have to decide that today. It's open for a week. If somebody comes forward with a proposal in that week, or David, if you think it could be made,
Well,
and you want to propose it, I guess we can consider it.
if you want the treasurer to be the sponsor of it?
Could be.
The acting treasurer is supposed to be evaluating the job and figuring out. the best
Then I'll
way.
sponsor it if nobody else comes forward.
Well, it can't get on the warrant unless the board puts it on the warrant, or there's 10 signatures.
Right.
Or the other group, we're going, David and I, or I'm going, I don't know if you're going to be able to make it. I was invited by Kitty to go to their meeting Monday night, and I know that topic will come up. so,
And I've also asked David to attend the meeting as well,
yeah.
and so that, you know.
So
we might-
we'll know
we
by
should-
Thursday where you guys are at.
Right.
Yeah.
We might find we're all in concert.
Or maybe not, yeah,
Right.
and that will help us next Thursday.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so I think, what do we have on the table? We have a motion to open the warrant tonight and close it on the 20,
And to schedule
Third.
a meeting of the board of selectmen.
25th. We're meeting on the 20, we're meeting on the 25th.
You want to close it on the 24th, and you're
We want
meeting
to close
the
on
night
the
of the
24th.
25th.
We're meeting the 25th.
Okay. So moved. Second.
All in favor? Okay, another thing accomplished.
And is there anything on the
Running in the water.
the schedule here that we, the selectmen, need to adopt?
What's that, Paul?
On the schedule for the town meeting?
Now, the only other date that I was looking to try to nail down was just a scheduling date. So advisory had requested that the Board of Selectmen take positions on the articles before their hearing. So in order to do that,
You have to do that next week.
you'd have to do it on the 25th, yeah.
Well, that's, right.
And we,
Or you're going to be seeing,
we either do or we don't, I mean, right?
Well, I think it's a pretty good policy they have, that they ask for input from various town boards, and especially the selectmen.
And their hearing is the first, and that's it's an evening hearing, is that correct?
yeah, that's,
Yes.
I believe that's already posted.
Okay. Putting all these on my calendar. Okay. All right, so we've scheduled a lot of stuff. So the warrant opens tonight.
It's open.
You might want to go downstairs and see
Can
what's
we just-
coming in.
Can we just make it tomorrow?
You want to open it tomorrow? I thought we just voted tonight.
We did.
I thought you voted to open it from the 19th to the 25th.
You're the only one who heard that, did
Well, it was written down on the timeline. That's all.
That's fine, I move to amend the prior motion to be the 19th.
Okay,
Second.
all right, all in favor? Even when we decide something, we don't decide it, Peter.
So we're open 9:19 to 9:24. We meet next week, the 25th. Advisory has a public hearing the 1st. This other stuff in the middle, we have to sign a warrant no later than this date, the 26th, but we could do that the 25th, yes? No?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Okay.
Which would be Friday morning.
So we'll do it.
No, if we did it the 25th,
Gotcha, okay, right,
and
that's our Thursday
sign
night.
the warrant that night, as the final warrant.
So on the 25th, you'll sign the warrant and take positions on the articles, on those that you want to take a position on.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever
Okay.
we choose to do.
All right, I think we're on to the next, oh, no, we're not. Okay, Kitty.
One quick question. It will be closing the 24th at 5 PM?
Sure, 5 PM.
End of business.
Well, what time is our office closed on that day?
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Okay.
Thank you.
When the selectman's office is closed.
Remember, they roll down that.
Okay. I think that's an important clarification. 5 PM, okay? All right, I think we're on to the next thing, which is to consider, the background of this is we were asked by the advisory chair whether we would take a position and make a recommendation as to a no override budget. That's something that we traditionally would do in the same room with advisory at the same time.
Not necessarily. I think the selectmen have done that independently. They've done it with advisory, I think.
Well, the request was made that for logistical reasons, that it would be helpful if they didn't have to meet with us to do it this year. And whether we would do it on our own, which I think is a good idea.
Yeah, I'm happy, but I think we do tend to meet with them, forgetting the no override vote for the moment.
Well, we meet with them.
We meet with them to deal with the scheduling and the letter that goes out and so forth.
Yeah, so I think right now you'd be setting a recommendation forward.
Well, I'm prepared to do that. I'm the one that's been making the motion for the last umpteen number of years.
Yeah.
You're the only one who's been around for 15 years, that's why we haven't had a chance to make that motion. We would have made the motion if we've been here for many years.
Gotta move quick.
But the point is that I think we have an obligation to establish leadership, and the direction that we want to lead is to work towards a non-override budget. We don't want to impose on the taxpayers. Obviously, if a crisis comes up between now and town meeting, that something extraordinary comes up, then of course we always have the option of listening to advisories, recommendations, and department heads or whatever. But in the meantime, setting a goal and striving for a non-override operating budget is good management. So I would move that the Board of Selectmen establish for fiscal year 16 the goal of a non-override operating budget.
I would second that, and for discussion, if I may. Sure. Why I'm comfortable doing that, you might say, well, geez, we don't know what's going to happen, what the budget needs are, and so forth, but there are a couple of, a variety of factors, but two that are most recent from one of our recent meetings. We approved a tax rate, and we learned that our average tax bill is $14,720 for the average house in Sherborn. That's a big nut to swallow. But more importantly, when it comes to an override, the other thing we learned is we got the preliminary results for fiscal 14, and we showed that we had a near a $920,000 surplus. And typically, the increases that result in an override are budget to budget. So we're operating at nearly $1 million less than what was budgeted for fiscal 14. So I think we've got room to play there in terms of should we have needs for increases that are greater in particular departments than normal guidance might suggest. I think we've got room to find it elsewhere. So,
Okay.
I
We
agree.
have a vote. I think we have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye, okay, good. We're catching up. We're only 50 minutes behind.
You're moving
now.
along, Mike. You're really doing a great job.
Okay, consideration of appointments. Do we want to let, since I think Ed is here, do we want to let him make a
Yes.
presentation? I
Yes,
think, is that all right with you,
that's
Paul?
good.
So Ed,
Ed?
we were gonna jump to you, if that's okay, and get you out of here quicker, unless you're interested in hearing more of this other stuff. And so Ed's here to give us an update on the CM&D projects that he's been taking care of this summer, and where we are in the budget for those.
We, excuse me, I'm not feeling very well. We did get the North Main Street done, as you know, and the Goulding Street culvert. We did not get our Chapter 90 funds approved until late July, which put us behind the schedule and getting on the schedule with Lynch Paving. I spoke with Lynch beginning of this week. They are putting us on the schedule for the 1st of October. He anticipates being able to do all of our scheduled projects that we previously discussed, which included Woodland Street, Butler Street, and Goulding Street East. What I am going to do, though, is, given that we are late in the season, and if any impending weather comes in, I do want to get the transfer station done first, so I'm going to be prioritizing that. So we will do a full depth reclamation on the transfer station as scheduled. CM&D is going to handle installing the drainage. We'll try to get to that before the snow flies. And then in the springtime, we'll come back in and do a final top coat in the transfer station. That way it'll have a good season to settle, acclimate, and still be plowable and be
ask
much
a
better
question?
road surface than we have now.
I thought that, I thought the drainage work had to be done before the paving.
No, we can do the, there's only 2 basins that the engineer recommended going in. We went back and forth with Bridget on a couple different designs, and we finally settled on one that I think makes the most sense. They first approached us to do leaching pits, and I'm just not a big fan of leaching pits because over a couple of years they do fail, and what they end up doing is holding X amount of gallons of water and then overflow. So what we're going to do is go with a deep sump, and he has a newer basin style that has a baffle in it to catch any oils that should go, and we can dissipate that out. But by doing the binder course first, it gives us a good elevation of where to set the structures, and then when we come along in the springtime to pave over, it's seamless.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ed, can I ask you 2 questions? One, the status of the extra pothole money spending and work that we did. Where are we at with that? And David, I left you a sheet that came to me in my mail bin as former chair, they still have me as a chair, that says, make sure you submit things to the state in a timely manner in a certain way. So I put that on your pile of stuff there.
All of that's been completed. We did a number of different infrareding in spots. We did the line painting. We did a regrade of Green Lane, and we did a number of different guardrail.
And we had like
repairs.
36,000 to play with
It
or
was
something.
like
right?
38,000, I believe
Yeah.
it was.
So we spent all that.
Spent all of that.
Okay, that's good. Second question, and I think we wanted to have sense by tonight's meeting on the scrapings, the safety of scrapings, because you're still into dealing with creating
I
some
apologize,
scrapings.
I didn't put that memo together. I did receive word from the engineer that we can utilize the scrapings, the grindings from road work in the manner which we discussed.
And he's comfortable with that
He
safety.
placed a phone call to DEP.
Yeah.
The DEP confirmed it, and I have an email from him with the gentleman at the DEP that he spoke with.
Okay, did we approve that subject to a favorable engineering report, or do we need to approve that at our next meeting? Does anybody remember how
I
that
think
was worded?
originally there was talk of bringing it back at a future agenda.
Another future agenda?
Yeah,
Okay.
but if you don't, you don't.
Well, it's not on this agenda, is the problem with approving it if we didn't already approve it contingently.
I thought we
You
had.
did approve it contingent
Thought
on
we had.
a successful report from,
Yeah, I
yeah,
thought we had,
Yep.
right?
Okay, so that's yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So that means he can go ahead. Yes?
So do we have a motion based on that report? Or do we want to see the report in writing? I mean, I don't,
Yeah, I'd like to see the report and circulate it a little bit.
all right, so for the next agenda, can you put it on the next agenda, David? And
The
Ed,
20
can you get us a report?
It's an email from the engineer,
Okay.
he documenting his conversation with the gentleman at the DEP that he spoke with.
Okay. Yeah, so can we get that before the next meeting and put it on the next
25th?
agenda?
Yeah,
If it's going to be circulated, should I cancel out the addresses and things like that, or just leave the names?
All right.
Whose
Send it
addresses?
To me, I'll send it to the abutters, but I'll take out whatever
Right.
you want me to take.
What
in
addresses are we
terms of-
taking out?
It'd be the personal email of our engineer.
Oh,
I can take that out.
okay.
Or you can take it out, but if you send it to me, I'll send it to the abutters. And then they can read it for themselves. And if the
So we'll all get that, yeah.
I'm sure there's privacy in email addresses, but okay.
And you'll still be able to utilize and put them down within this season if
Yeah.
we approve things by next
I
week?
could, yes.
Okay.
All right.
So,
So I think you.
So you
were
can wait a
interrupted.
week.
Do you want to go through the rest of your list?
Yeah, I normally like doing them when it's a little warmer weather than October. They're a lot more pliable when you're laying them out and rolling them out in warmer weather.
but you're not pounding the table to say, resolve it tonight.
No,
You can wait a week.
I can wait a week, I can wait till next spring, the next road job that we do.
You had a few more on here. Did you want to address those, or I think you had talked about the transportation. Woodland Street would be next, I guess, on your list.
Yes, the other road work is the scheduled stuff that we spoke about this springtime, which you guys approved, would be Woodland Street from Mill to Washington, which will be a grind and a repave. Butler Street, which will be an overlay of the complete end-to-end. And then Goulding Street will be a grind and a pave from South Main Street to the railroad tracks.
Okay. And are these all going to get done this fall? Is that the plan?
I'm hoping.
Okay. And on Woodland Street, as you probably know, there's a lot of concern about speeding on that stretch of Woodland Street, and I know the chief has been, in the middle of trying to figure that out. Once it's smoothed and paved, it's going to be a lot faster road. Do you have any thoughts on?
I would like to
Can be
say
done.
that people will reduce their speeds, but
No, you know they won't.
it's simply not true.
Call it a radar gun.
So I'm sure that the chief will be continuing his traffic enforcement on there.
Do you paint side stripes on those roads?
On
The
that one
edges?
there, I believe we had a single yellow only
Down the middle?
down the middle.
Yeah, because pedestrian safety is a big issue, and if cars go quicker on that street, it's going to be even a bigger issue.
It is, and one of the issues that you have in, we were discussing this with, outside about Everett Street, with the narrower roadways, when you do the center line, and then you've got the fog line at the edge, in a 20-foot layout, it's difficult then for the cars to stay within those lines. So even though we put a yellow fog line down, you're not going to have a pedestrian that's going to be able to walk on the road because that fog line's going to be right at the edge of pavement. In the cases like Farm Road, that'll be the first line to fade earlier than the others because people travel on the line because they can't stay, the road's just not wide enough.
Right.
So if there's no oncoming traffic, people do feel more comfortable riding the center of the lane.
Okay. I mean, maybe that's not something that it's fair to ask you in terms of the safety, but I think we do have to consider that that's going to be a problem, and maybe enforcement's the only way to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, the other concern that I've heard expressed, even about Woodland and other streets, was the ability to, the edges for riding bikes. So you're paving, you're getting the right edge on these streets, but it's not only pedestrians, it's the dog walkers, and it's the bicyclists that by doing this, hopefully we'll have the best edges we possibly can
Yeah.
for bicyclists. All right. Get better.
Elliot, you had a question about road paving?
Yes, you just mentioned the edge of the streets. At about 100 Hunting Lane, there's a chunk out of the edge of the street, about half the size of that table. And go to Green Lane and continue on up and look over to your left, and I'm sure you'll either see it or fall
It's
into
a
it.
perennial
And-
washout up there that we continue to deal with. And,
Well, you mentioned bicycles, and when I drive by that, I says, one of these days I'm going to stop in and talk to you about it, and I've talked to you about it, so.
Thanks, Elliot. Yeah, we got a lot of pressing business, so that's good. Thanks, Ed. All right, now we're up to appointments.
The appointments that were posted were for the Personnel Board. There were 2 vacant seats with 2-year terms expiring 6/15/2016, and there were 2 applicants, Thomas Twining and Julia Jacobson. There's the Sherborn Arts Council, 3 vacant seats, each with terms expiring 6/15/2017. And there were 3 applicants, Ann Hovey, Jill Carroll, and Tish Gogan. And then the Western Avenue Intersection Committee up for reappointment, which was earlier sunsetted.
Okay,
So can I move the appointments as read by the town administrator for the Personnel Board and the Sherborn Arts Council?
I'd like to take the Personnel Board ones one at a time if we can.
Okay?
Okay. So do you want to move again there, Paul?
So, can I do the Sherborn Arts Council altogether?
Sure.
So can I move Ann Hovey, Jill Carroll, and Trish Gogan to the Sherborn Arts Council for terms expiring June 15, 2017?
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye, okay.
Can I move for the Personnel Board? You want to take each of these separately?
I think we should.
Okay. I move to appoint Tom Twining to a 2-year term on the Personnel Board expiring on June 15, 2016.
I second.
Do we have any discussion? I have some discussion. I can't support this nomination based on a concern for both no formal HR experience, but also there has been some concern expressed about demeanor with employees and the ability to be constructive in this position. I think Tom's a very talented guy. I know he served the town well on the Board of Selectmen. I just don't think this is a good position for him, Paul.
Well, it's a 5-person board, right? So this is 1 seat.
It hasn't been 5 for a while, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem, is that there's been vacancies, and it's been,
We've been running with 3 for a while.
so it's, I think the town's better off having 5, and this is 1 out of 5.
Actually, we've been running with 4 until Jim left.
I think, there are others in town with, formal, strong HR experience, including some who served on that board previously, might be persuaded to come back, and others maybe who haven't served at all. I just think we'd be well-served to have some people with real strong HR experience in that position.
Well, I was excited to see that Tom was willing and able to step up and move into this role. I've served with him for 1 year on this committee, on the Board of Selectmen, and I found him to be quite invigorating, and I think the Personnel Committee could use some invigoration, not to say that there's people there that aren't, but I think he'd bring an interesting perspective. I found Tom to be a very quick study on a variety of issues. I think he was quite active in a number of the efforts that we've undergone to try to improve government for the residents and the taxpayers and the voters. He brought the Collins Center in. He brought in a number of he helped bring the DOR in. I think Tom's a good, real bright guy that can add a lot of value no matter where he goes, and I'm glad to see that he's willing to go somewhere. And I think that, from what I read, the Personnel Committee would be happy to have him, so I'm in full support.
I move the question.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay,
I move to appoint Julia Jacobson for a 2-year term on the Personnel Board for a term expiring June 15, 2016.
I second.
any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, we don't need to do Western Avenue, so what's the next thing?
Do we do this last one here in the bottom?
I don't think that was advertised.
Okay. Gotcha.
Next, we have Town Administrator Report.
Yep. First, I wanted to bring up that there's, it's an MPO election. I think you've done this every year or every couple of years. And the letter was to Mr. Jaimo. This summer, the MAPC sent notification to all Boston region MPO communities regarding the upcoming MPO municipal elections. Thanks to your endorsement and those of other area communities in 2011, Medway was fortunate enough to be nominated and elected to the SWAP sub-regional seat. That SWAP sub-regional term concludes this year. It is our hope that Medway may continue to serve as the SWAP sub-regional representation on the MPO for another term. And there's a nomination paper that would need to be signed by the chair of the Board of Selectmen if the board was going to do that. And that's has to be returned by October 3rd.
Who's the actual person?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Dennis P. Crowley,
Is that the town
the chief
administrator?
elected.
Chairman of the Board of Selectmen?
I think so, yeah. But I can bring it back next week for
Yeah,
an agenda
I'd
vote.
be interested in what Gino, or maybe John, if he's still here, has to say about
Okay.
that
John is
subject.
not
John
here.
Higley's not here. He left. But, the MAPC is a planning organization. I think our planner has good ties there. I know Dennis Crowley, I believe, has been at some of the SWAP meetings, which is the Southwest Area Planning Council, which is a subsidiary of the MAPC.
Okay.
But I don't know in any other way whether he represents our interests or,
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so let me, I didn't really have time to talk to Gino about it.
Okay.
And
See what he
I
thinks.
thought weren't going to be meeting again until October 2nd, so that's why I was bringing it
Bring that up
forward.
next week.
Yeah, so we'll put it on the 25th. Let's see. This week I met with Whitewater about the UV sanitation filter at Woodhaven that's been a problem for a number of years. And Diane and I met with them and put some pressure on them to go back to their legal counsel that what are they going to do next if we hold them personally responsible, not the manufacturer of that part. So that's where we're at right now with them. Also met with the library trustees Tuesday night about the construction, so to learn about the funding and the construction timeline. So there's a draft timeline right now, and they're drafting those documents, and I believe they'll be in the next, on the timeline, I think it's in the next 2 months or so, to talk to the selectmen about putting together that building committee. And then I had a question posed to me about what's going on in the treasurer's office. So I thought,
Everybody's asking that question.
so I'd just give an update on that.
Yeah, please.
As you know, Pete Hoagland retired effective July 31st, 2014, and since then, office duties have been managed by Heather Peck, the assistant treasurer, with my involvement only needed on a higher level for items requiring a signature or some sort of policy decision, such as whether to pursue the state aid anticipation note or not. So this state aid anticipation note is for $235,000 that we would need to borrow while we wait for the Chapter 90 funds to come in. It's an occurrence that's happened in the past. I know it happened this time last year. And this is for a paving project we wanted to get done this year.
So you've, as treasurer, has approved that, and that's going to come to the board on the 25th of
Yes,
September?
yes. That's when it will be signed. The actual date of the note would be October 6th. We'll have the bids in September 24th in the morning, so. And Heather and I have been working to get the OPEB trust fund set up. As you know, we've been putting the OPEB funds into a stabilization fund. This last town meeting, we voted to transfer it into an actual trust fund setup, and we're locating that with the with PRIM, the Pension Reserves Investment Management Board, run by the state. So that's where the OPEB trust fund money will be, and then we will, as soon as that's set up, we'll transfer it from MMDT, which is under the treasurer's control, the state treasurer's office, into this PRIM-operated account. There's only one document that we're waiting back from council, and that board meets October 9th, and will finalize our approval to set up that account. As for cash flow, the town's available cash balance dips to its lowest levels this time of year, and the current amount is about $500,000. So while I originally thought we would need a tax anticipation note, we had talked to, and we'd put our financial advisor at Eastern Bank on notice that that was probably going to happen. It doesn't look like we're going to need it. And what we're going to do is just hold some accounts payable bills till after October 1, which is, nothing is going to be late. It's just an assurance. We can see some tax dollars maybe coming in by that time.
Did you mean November 1?
No.
Because the tax bills aren't due until November 1.
Right. As of, no, we're holding them until the beginning of October. And I was thinking that there would be more in, but maybe it's a different revenue. I'll have to go back and look at the actual projection, but
But your
I thought it
projection
was
shows that
tax
as of
receipts.
October, we have more revenue.
right. I mean, I think, did I distribute the flow chart on that? Okay. It starts going up through the whole month of October for the last few
So
years.
some people pay their the tax bills due November 1st, they pay early.
I'm not sure why they
I
would,
don't know
but,
how early and why, but
Yeah.
they apparently maybe do it. I don't know,
It's because Nancy's extremely persuasive.
but you might be balancing on the edge here a little bit.
no, but it could be other receipts. That's why I say, let me get the breakdown of what the receipts are that are going into that
Yeah.
October.
Does our
And,
collector know what those receipts are?
Well, I can't tell you what they will be, but last year we were able to transfer $40,000.
Okay, that's good.
So I'll get you a breakdown of what the revenue is that's feeding into that projection.
Yeah, because some of these warrants, right, we're doing one right now, which I presume you factored in, I don't know what that is, but
Mhm.
it looks like a big number.
It's a payroll,
You know, they
yeah.
can be $1 million in a heartbeat, right?
Right. Going back, we're utilizing the consultant a lot less than we expected to, which is good news. They're only visiting twice a month for about 6 hours each day.
But the assistant is picking up some of those hours.
Yes, and the assistant has been doing basically all the reconciling, and the only thing the person has to do is come in and verify the statement balances and the reconciliations.
Are they asking questions, though, about what we're doing and about, looking at how things are done? I mean, that was one
He's-
of the key things we wanted.
He spent time there going through their different spreadsheets and seeing how they're analyzing things and putting things together. But I'll meet with him on the 22nd, Monday, and I'll know what's in his head as far as putting together a
But you
report.
understand, what we're just looking at what happens in that corner of this building
Mhm.
altogether.
And how to do it better,
Yeah.
Well,
safer for the taxpayers.
I mean, they're not going to say anything different from the Collins report or the DOR. I mean, a structured
hire?
financial department structure that's what these guys are going to.
No, yeah, I don't know.
But we're paying them, they hopefully will add some value.
Right, yeah. And they know that they're supposed to be issuing a report, so.
Okay.
Monday, we'll talk to the details, and if you want to come in, we can meet with them together and talk.
That might be a great idea.
I'll think about it.
Okay. We changed an internal policy about using the cash turnover box and transferred payroll from under the treasurer to being under the town accountant. And the payroll assistant said that most of her dealings were with the town accountant anyway, so that it's a good transition to make.
Is that a time saver too? In either sense, does it get it done quicker, or does it save staff time?
No, it's just organizationally, yeah. Because as I said, she was working with the town accountant mostly in the past, so. And I do want to know, Heather said that she saw the agenda item and that she would be here knowing that there was a treasurer's department, but she has a previous commitment that she couldn't make it, so.
Okay. And you are presumably also noting, like you just described one, but noting things that could be done, either things you've already spotted before or things that are becoming more obvious now that you're up there? That
Yeah.
where processes, you feel that there's improvements, or, I mean, is there anything you can share with us on that? Or is it still too early?
No, it's still too early. I mean, I haven't sat there, I'm still in my office, and, it's just picking up what I'm learning from them or going up and talking to them. It's mostly payroll that's, I think we could make some improvements in, but it's getting a system in, so
Okay.
I might be looking at seeing how much those systems will
You know, if you haven't
cost.
already, David, you might give these to the consultant, just to, there's the management letter as well as the audited report. Just gives a lot of background of Sherborn.
Yeah.
The consultant, they already have that, I don't know.
We gave them the audit, we gave them the DOR report, we gave them the Collins
Yeah,
report.
okay, good.
Yeah.
On that subject, could the library trustees get the section of the management letter that talks about them?
I assume they did, but I'll double check.
I had a conversation with,
I mean, it would make sense that it was sent to them by the accountant
I don't think
to get a
they
response.
They were, because I spoke to Jim Murphy, and I don't think he was aware of the comments about the library.
Okay. I'll talk to the town accountant tomorrow and see what was actually taken in. So that's all.
Okay. So we're up to Selectmen business, and that takes us to the policy reports?
Yes.
Okay, and I think you mentioned you had some comments from some various departments about the professional development policy. Was that something that you wanted additional time to incorporate those comments, or are they things we should discuss tonight?
Ideally, I'd like to have them all incorporated into one document so that you're not looking at 3 edited documents from 3 different people.
So maybe we'll take up the mailing policy, because I think that's closer to being cooked. And you come back next week with get us earlier in the week the revised professional development policy?
Yeah, I didn't receive any further comments on the townwide mailing.
Okay.
That is-
I have a few, but there
I have a few,
some
too.
editing. Maybe we should just go through it and share our comments, David, and
Okay.
we'll let you get a copy, or let Diane get a copy out so we can actually.
Okay.
All right, good. First paragraph, anything?
Yeah, no, I wanted that deleted entirely.
Okay.
It's just because I believe in being positive and not being negative. And there's no need to criticize. Whatever is the past is the past. It's time to move forward.
Which version are you looking
No,
at?
you're not, you're looking at the memo that I gave you. That's not the policy.
It's the one-page thing here, right?
It's this 9-2
Yeah, well,
draft. No, we're looking at this one, Paul. It's a 9-2 draft. I think your comment on that paragraph, it's a different
From an
paragraph.
earlier
you're referring
draft.
to.
We haven't been circulating the memo from the original time that we had sent it out.
All right,
So it's
So what happens to this memo?
gone. It's not even in your packet anymore.
Okay.
So your packet
good.
there, Paul, has this in it. Promise.
Well, it
About
may
halfway
be,
back.
but this is what I read.
Yeah.
All right. You can catch up. What do you don't have the draft out? Oh, that's not our draft.
It's in his
Paul.
packet.
It's in the
all that
package.
packet.
But you cannot offer the comments there.
Yeah, I just don't think that paragraph is in this particular one.
Well, he said he said that entire page is gone.
Yep. Okay. Anybody have comments on this, or you?
Well, I just have comments
so-
down below, nothing in
Okay,
the
so
first
so
paragraph.
From the start of this, David, in the third paragraph where you start the introduction to that bullet-pointed section, I think we should start that by saying it is the policy of the town of Sherborn that, and then go into the discussion. So this is a mailing policy to try to save money on townwide mailings. That's what we're talking about here. There's then 4 bulleted items. And on the last bulleted item, I was suggesting that you add something that says, where possible and appropriate, the cost of such advertising should be charged to an applicant, just to make clear that, I think that's probably the practice of most boards anyway, but in the next paragraph, you referred to department, but I think we should be talking about town bodies or departments. And likewise, in the intro to those bullets, where you say, please consider the following, I would delete the word please and say, all town governmental bodies and departments should consider the following.
Okay.
And then I would delete this phrase, David, the please consider the following phrase up through the word postage, and just have it say the following is required. And you have 6 bullets there. And the third bullet is a question I have, which is, it says, content cannot take a position on a town meeting or town ballot issue unless the position in mailing has been specifically voted by the Board of Selectmen or Advisory Committee. And I guess I'm trying to understand how that would work in practice.
Well, using the example that had kicked off before, the criticism was that it was endorsing a position,
So, but
a
the
department's
planning
position.
board may have articles that they want to advertise. For example, they send a mailing out, and the selectmen and advisory don't favor the articles, but they're the planning board's articles.
Right.
Independently elected board. I don't see that we have any right to tell them they can't use that content. We may question how they distribute it for financial reasons, but I really don't see how we can censor boards, particularly boards that are independent bodies.
Right.
What if they're taking a position on something?
Well, the planning board, I presume the planning board
Would take a position.
very often takes positions on
Yeah, I
things.
get you on that.
You know,
But that's more in the advisory mailer, yes? That they take their position?
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
trying to think of examples.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the challenge was, and in my comment on those, the bullets 2 and 3, it's, the purpose is to try, and the wordsmithing needs to
Yeah.
be refined further, is to just try to ensure that taxpayer-funded entities, independent or otherwise, aren't necessarily promoting something unless it's within their charge.
No, that's not,
I mean, maybe that's my take of what.
Right.
My take of one of the things we're trying to accomplish here, in
Right.
addition to cost savings.
I think at the time when we were talking about the last issue with that mailing was whether it was even legal or not. And under state law, it was legal, taking the position and endorsing a specific position of the town that's being considered at a town meeting is a legal thing to do.
But
So-
the concern there was funding, and I think we're still concerned about funding. So
Right.
I'm not sure we need to do this prior
The
restraint
content.
part of it. That seems
Well-
to be unwise.
Well, so the funding, so one of the exceptions, if you look at that lead-in paragraph that he has in that section, an exception is purpose that was not specifically budgeted. So purposes that are budgeted, even if they're going to take a position, aren't subject to these issues. And I think we need to rethink that. You follow what I'm saying?
I do, because we are concerned about the budget. So if they're budgeted for it, fine, but if they're not budgeted for
That's what
it,
this says.
yeah, okay.
Right.
And I think that even budgeted items should be limited in position-taking to the extent that it could be a controversial thing. You know, I don't know. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that
Well, we could
taxpayer
take out,
dollars.
if you don't want to get into content, just take out bullets 2 and 3. But, I don't know if that meets what
No, I thought
The
we did
original,
want to get into content. Maybe we have different objectives here.
I think the content part of it was an element, but the bigger part of it is the cost savings. I just don't know that this is clear.
But the issue that pushed some of this was the concern by some residents and taxpayers that there was an inappropriate use of taxpayer monies spent on a mailing that promoted a particular position.
Right, and the other thing that prompted it was routine mailings that are done without thought about how to do it another way that might save some money.
Yeah.
So there's a couple
Yeah,
purposes.
but what and all I'm really referring to in these two bullets is ensuring that we're happy with any level of restriction, if you will, that's a strong word, over mailings that go out with a position that are funded by taxpayers, when various taxpayers may have different positions on the item. I don't know how we do that, but.
Maybe Barbara has a suggestion, David, for skinning that cat. That sounds to me like it does raise some, potential issues in terms of,
Censoring.
yes, censoring or prior
That's right.
restraint.
Yeah.
So maybe she's got some examples or some issues, or maybe Paul has some examples in other towns that he knows of where they've grappled with this issue. I don't know.
Well, part of this is, there's a law. You cannot spend public funds to try and influence an election.
That's a candidate election, right? Or a ballot question election. It's not a town meeting warrant
It
election.
doesn't? That's why I say part of this recites state law. But it goes beyond state law.
Okay.
So my proposed edit was to state just the state law, because I think having everything in one place makes sense.
Mhm.
So I would have said, cannot take a position on a town ballot issue
Or election.
or election. Yeah. You certainly can't have a town board.
And that's period. That has nothing to do with whether the selectmen or anybody
Right.
else approves.
Right.
Right.
Even if we approved it, that's all illegal.
Right.
No approval by us
That's
makes it
good.
legal.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Simple.
Yeah, and keep the second bullet in as worded.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I think that covers us.
All right. So David, I've got some of these scratched out here.
Okay.
This isn't a hearing on this subject.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Well, you made a lot of comments
Not
tonight,
on
George.
this- Not on this subject. On the previous subject where I have my hand up, I was going to make an
Yeah,
observation.
we're past that now.
Well, I'd like to revisit.
Okay, we're up to the next subject here.
Would you like me to put it in writing?
Do what you want to do, George.
What did you say?
To do what you want to do, that's fine, put it in writing.
Well, what I'd like to do is point out that the Personnel Committee is supposed to be drafting personnel policies. So
Okay,
I'm
any more
concerned
selectmen
the training
business?
policy is a personnel policy.
George, you're not going to hijack the meeting.
I didn't hijack it.
We're on to another subject now, we're up to selectmen
You
business.
recognize me as I requested.
So we're holding the professional development
I think we're
for
holding
further
that
input.
policy.
And
There are a
on-
number of comments that came in this week.
Good. I want to see all the comments put, to the extent that you can, incorporate it. But what about the IT policy?
No, that was just handout for your review, and we'll bring that back at a future meeting, so you can, we talked about bringing that back at some point.
Right. That's something
So
you
that's-
borrowed from someplace, is that,
No, that Selectmen passed it in
oh, this is ours.
2000.
Yeah, that's a new one on me. And so do we do this annual, get everybody to sign off?
No,
Why aren't we doing
Well, I think
that?
because it's old.
we're
right?
starting,
It's 4 years old, but
this is the first
But
annual
there's something in
sign.
here that's absolutely a violation of law and can't stand.
Vote,
Must be.
What's that?
The thing here that says accounts of terminated employees will be deleted 30 days after termination date in the files and data contained within those accounts will no longer be...
The AG's or Secretary of State's rules, right?
Right, you
Yeah.
can't destroy records that way.
No, it's not. It's held for 7 years. So that's why I'm saying it does need to be updated.
All right, so we need to update
Yeah,
that.
so this is a plain violation of law, and it's got to be fixed sooner rather than later. I thought it was on the agenda for today, but
No, it's just, it's in development.
So back to this professional development policy, so we're going to see the comments and then come back again on this thing?
I think that's what we have to do.
Okay.
David got late filed comments, but I think, David, at this point, I hope you have all the comments you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
You've done a good
Yeah.
job, I think, of going around to the different offices and getting people's input and giving them a chance.
We sent it around to
feedback.
everybody
Okay.
a month or two ago.
Yeah.
And we got a round of comments then. We had a department head meeting this past Monday, and we got another round, and some from the same people who had given us
Okay.
comments before.
You know, and so I'll only say one thing on this, David, is one fundamental way to look at it, given that you're the warrant approver, right? That you need to satisfy yourself that you're happy with the expenditure to be able to justify it on your own, right? I mean, so
Well, if it's
trying to
a,
get what you need in that regard.
and that's why I tried to point out, if it's a budgeted expenditure that's been approved in somebody's budget, that it's.
Yeah, although I will say the reality is nobody really looks too, I mean, the budgets are prepared in great detail, but not a lot of review of the detail gets typically done.
Right, but I think it should be.
Okay.
All right. Any more selectmen reports, or any selectmen reports?
Well, we never did the warrant signing.
Is that
That's on this
before?
list.
That's before? Okay.
That's in this parentheses, operating procedures, goals, objectives. What are we doing here?
So instead of doing a separate warrant policy, I thought it would be best to include it in that operating procedures document,
Okay.
All right, so,
if we
So
come
what-
up with
so
the wording.
Your question is, do we have a warrant signing policy?
Yeah.
I think the answer is,
and we talked about cliff notes or,
you have to
that's really what it
propose
is.
something, I think, David, for us to
Right.
react to, unless somebody up here wants to write it.
Yeah.
No, I emailed with Peter about what the parameters
Okay.
we would be.
So you guys are working
So
on something?
we haven't really, I haven't given
you
much,
back a
but,
draft,
yeah.
no.
That's the subject.
So we got to come up, yeah.
Okay, good.
But I would like to fold that into that, a
Into
review
this
of that
baby
whole.
here is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot has changed since then, too.
Good. Okay.
That computer thing was something.
Anything else? No? Paul, anything?
no, but I need to take a bathroom break soon.
Well, we're going to go into executive session, I think. Is that all right?
Yeah, what's up?
I think that's the next item, isn't it, David, or, oh, we have to approve the warrant? All right, well, if you want to take 5 now, and then we'll come back and approve the warrant, is that,
No, he
If you're
approves it.
planning-
We just have to approve whatever relates to him, or not even that.
okay.
Payroll,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm misreading this item, okay.
right?
Very
I
good.
mean,
Yeah, that's right, that's right. So the next thing would be, we intend to go into executive session, and I think the Board of Health is here, and you missed presumably the beginning part of the meeting, but what we intend to do is go into executive session as just this board first to discuss a citizen's complaint concerning, that does involve your board, but that we would like to talk about first. Then come out of that executive session and vote presumably to go into executive session again with the Board of Health. And I think you would have to vote at that time to go into executive session also. And then after that, we would come out of executive session to take care of one more item on this warrant. And then, I believe, vote to go into executive session to talk about the cell tower settlement, which does not involve the Board of Health. So that's the plan from here on out.
Dunkin' Yo-Yos.
All right, do I have the script that I need for this? Do you have it? No, great. Okay. I move that the Board of Selectmen enter into executive session to discuss the Murchison complaint and to comply with the attorney-client privilege pursuant to Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM 449 Mass 444-207. And I would note, Town Council is here and will be in the executive session with us. I need a second and a roll call vote.
You should also cite exemption 5
And exemption 5
under 30A.
under Chapter 30A. Thanks.
Second.
Okay, the motion is seconded by Mr. Caruso, and we will now have a roll call vote. Mr. Durensis.
Aye.
Mr. Caruso.
Aye.
Mr. Gymo, aye. Having passed by a vote of 3-0, the open session is now closed, and we are in executive session.
To return.
To return at an unknown time. I mean, I don't know how long this is going to take. I'm sorry for folks who are interested. I don't think it'll take an hour, but it might take a half an hour. Or it might not. I just really don't know.
All right. Good. Nice to see you. Yeah, and I'm saying that you don't need to go out.
It's for fine.
Probably not going.
No?
The Association of Town Finance Committees.
Ready to go? Okay. Good evening. We're convening back into open session after our executive session. It's 9:17 p.m. We met in executive session to discuss a complaint filed by a citizen, Bob Murchison, concerning allegations of financial irregularities allegedly involving a contractor for the Board of Health. By a 3-0 vote in executive session, the board decided to authorize the town administrator, with the consent of the chair of the Board of Selectmen, to work with town council to hire a special investigator to work with town council to investigate the complaints made by Mr. Murchison. That was a vote that was already taken, so we're not taking a vote now on that. Is there any other business in this open session?
Yes. First, let me say that when citizens file complaints, they should be treated with respect and should be looked into. And accordingly, I'd make the following additional motion. Resolve that the Board of Selectmen request that the Board of Health immediately suspend its relationship with its contractor pending the outcome of investigation by the special investigator.
Second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. I think we do have one more item, which was the held budget item from the last time.
We were going to have a joint executive session.
We'll get to that too, yep.
Okay.
Actually, we can get to that now. On advice of council, we can't have that executive session with you, unfortunately, and I wish we knew that ahead of time, because we wouldn't have asked you to come in, but that's what we've been advised.
We have been waiting for months to meet with you, and
And with council.
and with council, and it took a very long time for that to happen. And I'm surprised that you're making these kinds of decisions without talking to us.
Again,
Because,
And we have response to that accusation.
yes,
And we have been investigating, and we have been gathering information in response to that accusation. And we've had no contact, no support of council, and no opportunity to
Until
talk
very
about it.
recent.
Until
That's
very
not
recent.
accurate.
I'm sorry, you're right.
I've worked with you in
You-
July, I've worked with you in August, I've worked with you just last week.
Not specific to
And
this
Barbara's also
complaint.
worked with you as well.
okay, but not to the extent that we wanted, because we knew that this meeting has been planned for quite some time.
well, it was our intention to have this meeting, but again, on advice of council, we can't have this meeting in executive session. We can have a discussion now about the things you just raised, but we really can't engage in a discussion the way we thought we were going to have the discussion.
How does our board get sufficient counsel? Because because this is just, I'm finding it very odd, I have to say. I really thought this would be something that we could finally come together and have a discussion and talk about what we have been doing, and then we did get some guidance recently and spread out, but it's been quite limited. Again,
And why are
we
we
thought
not,
we would work together.
Why are we
and
not
I'm just
acting-
dismayed that we're not working
why are
together.
we not acting jointly as a town?
Hey, Chris, I mean, you might be able to help us with this. I mean, are they allowed to explain to us what they've been doing, or is that?
Well,
Yeah.
you're still, you can still have a joint meeting with them.
I see.
Post a joint meeting, but the reason we can't talk, the board and Board of Selectmen and Board of Health cannot meet in executive session because the purpose of the executive session didn't fit within one of the exemptions under the statute that permits boards to go into executive session. So if you want to talk about the contract, the discussion has to take place in open session.
No, we want to talk about the complaint.
Yes.
You can't talk about, well, if you want to talk about the complaint can be discussed, but it has to be discussed in open session. If you want to discuss it in executive session, the
Well, didn't you just
applicable
discuss
exemption, excuse me, the applicable exemption would be exemption 1. Mr. Oram would have the right to have a notification 48 hours of, and I've explained this
Yes.
already, I believe, that he would have a right to notice and would have a right to attend the meeting, would have a right to demand that it be an open session. Otherwise, the complaint has to be discussed in open session.
Didn't you just finish discussing the complaint in executive session?
Not under exemption 1.
See, now, I would say
Under
this is
which
where we
exemption?
have been misled on the guidance, since we assumed that's what we were coming here to discuss tonight. What part of that, or did we get wrong?
To jointly
How did we
discuss the
even have
complaint.
something scheduled for tonight, and now it can't be?
I did not,
Have circumstances changed as a result of what you decided in this executive session that just took place, that now affect the executive session and the discussion and the working together cooperatively that we were anticipating tonight?
do you want to respond to it?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the response is. I mean, I think as the discussion in that room evolved, we were advised by town council that that was not a discussion we could have in the executive session with the Board of Health.
Okay. And could you have anticipated that that may have been a direction that your discussion with them would have gone, so that you could have advised us when we met with you for advice differently?
No.
No, I don't think Chris was aware of what some of the concerns were that was discussed in there, and I also don't think we were aware of the limitations on meeting with you. We intended to meet with you tonight in good faith. We thought we were going to meet with you tonight. I'm sorry you waited around for a meeting that didn't take place.
It's not so much the 2 hours, it's the several months, and it's the kinds of, the allegations that have been made and what we have looked into and what we think about that, and that really, as fellow townspeople and fellow volunteers and people working to try to make the town better, I'm shocked that you don't want to talk to us about that. And hurt. I am hurt about that.
And again, you know, Darrell, it's not intent to insult the Board of Health or hurt individuals or anything like that.
I don't understand how it's not that, working together.
Well,
Given what we just heard
we've had very serious complaints, which you've also gotten
Yes.
from a citizen in town with some potentially credible information behind it, and we chose to hire a special investigator to investigate that. Whatever you have figured out or developed with that information would probably be helpful to that special counsel also.
Could I ask, do you have more information that we have from Mr. Murchison? Because we've asked him for the remainder of his information, which he's chosen not to share with us unless he can present it for an hour in an open meeting.
Peter, I'll answer your question a little bit different way, which is, we've probably received the same information and the same questions and the same comments. You would prefer to have that discussed privately within this small circle of two boards and either resolved or not resolved in that forum. We chose, in the interest of the town, after a lot of deliberation, to go differently, which is to put that in the sunlight and to hire a special counsel who's not any of us, to do that investigation. Somebody who doesn't have a town board job and doesn't have a relationship with the town in any way. They're new to the situation, and they're going to come in and do an inquiry, just like anybody would do an inquiry. And that's how we chose to do that, because we thought that was the best policy and interest for the town, and for all of us as well.
Yes, and I can appreciate that, but when you say that, you know, I hope to have it a private conversation among the small group of us, my sense was that we were advised that that was the appropriate forum in which to discuss this. We could discuss this in open meeting, you know, and refute. In fact, we could right now refute the most serious charge about the week that Mr. Murchison chose to investigate in 2012 as to what appears to be a building and working in two different places at the same time. All right, the agent is...
Can I interrupt you?
Yes.
We want to have an independent, neutral, non-conflicted individual look at those allegations. If they have no merit, he will report it. If there are merits, he will report it. If you have information you want to share it with the investigator. We've already made this vote. We want it investigated by someone who has no conflict.
It's not a presumption one way or the other, Peter. It really is just a neutral approach.
And therefore, if there is no presumption, then I'm a bit surprised at Mr. Durancis's motion that the board immediately sever all relationships with our only professional agent, our only professional source for continuing the work of the board that is important, that has to be done.
Only temporarily, pending the outcome of the investigation by the special investigator.
And it's a resolution, it's a recommendation. That's not our decision, that's your decision.
Investigator will be paid from town funds, obviously.
Town council
Outside of
budget.
town council,
Yeah,
which is an expenditure to the taxpayers.
that's right.
Indeed.
And so for all the people who are expecting to receive service from the Board of Health at this upcoming very busy time of the year,
We can't make that decision, that's why we made a resolution. Really, that's your decision.
Right, and we can't act on that until we confer among ourselves.
Understood.
We are advised there are many people who do the work that health agents do, and many of them are available to come in temporarily. We just had a situation where the building inspector left this town. We've hired a new building inspector, but in the meantime, the town administrator found someone to come in and handle the business of the town. The business of a health agent is common to 351 cities and towns. It's not rocket science. What we wanted, like any time there's an investigation, the person who is being investigated normally is asked to stand aside so that the investigation can proceed unimpeded. This is pretty much standard practice across the state, not only for 351 cities and towns, but also for state government. If somebody's being investigated, they step aside. If it turns out that the investigator comes back and says, everything's fine, then I assume that you'll reinstate him. If the investigator comes back and says, no, there's a problem here, then further decisions have to be made at that time.
Respectfully, we haven't asked you to step aside.
Excuse me?
Respectfully, we have not asked the agent to step aside.
Right, we are asking you as a board to do that.
Okay, you can ask that, but clearly there are three members that will need to discuss.
Understood. Yeah, no, and that's exactly why it was phrased the way it was. We know we don't have any authority over hiring or terminating the agent.
And frankly, additionally, we would want advice of counsel before we made that decision. And we have a meeting scheduled with counsel for the 24th, fortunately, and I would hope that this can be addressed at that time.
Okay.
Should there be separate counsel for the Board of Health at the taxpayers' expense?
That is a question, seriously. Is in fact the Board of Health fairly served by the same agent, the same counsel as the Selectmen? Is there a dual, is there a conflict? Is there a similarity of purpose?
I think that Barbara's already addressed that with you, and I think the answer is that we can remain involved and advise both boards.
We can.
Yeah. There is no conflict between the boards.
All right.
We're all looking out for the public interest.
I can't agree with that more. That public
We are
interest
trying to
also
do
is
so
to
as well.
continue the service.
No, I think Paul meant we, the collective we. I don't think
The
he was
collective,
referring to
yeah,
just us.
there's 6 of us, the town. Yeah. We serve at, great expense of our own time and no compensation, and we serve because we want this to be the best town we can make it, and that's our aim.
But if you look at the way governments operate, if you look at the way state government operates, if there's a problem in a state department, like recently there was a problem with Department of Children Services, I forget the exact name of you don't ask the department head to investigate its own department. And so in this case, rather than having the Board of Health investigate the Board of Health's operations, we feel it is necessary for good government that someone outside the system, independent, without any stake in the outcome, look at this situation and come to an answer. We think if we don't do that, the complainant will not be satisfied and will not rest. If the investigation shows that there's something amiss here, then we need to have further meetings and further discussion. But this should be investigated by someone who has no connection with the department in which the issue arose. That's the operative principle that we're operating under.
And to that end, I might ask you, say, this need only be for the period of the investigation, but in fact, how rapidly and how expeditiously can that investigation proceed, and how long one might expect it to last?
We've asked it to be done quickly.
Well, we haven't asked anybody yet because we haven't engaged anybody. We only just made this decision a half an hour ago. But I think we all have the interest in getting this done and resolved and, having a direction on this as soon as possible.
Can I presume that 1 month is sufficient?
Peter, I don't think we can go to a deadline. We haven't talked to council. I don't know what it's going to involve. When the special counsel's hired, one of the things we're going to tell them is there's an interest in getting this done as quickly as reasonably possible. So
I'm looking to our meeting next Wednesday when I think we're going to be making some major decisions and taking some major actions. I'm trying to establish the parameters for that, and I would hope possibly by that time, council talks to an investigator, has some idea of that time period. Because I believe that the time period involved will frame some of our decision on how we move forward.
Okay.
It's possible, but again, the scope of the investigation, how long it will take, I think it's premature to say tonight, yeah, it's going to take 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
I think there are 2 separate issues. It may be that the board sees in the wisdom of the selectmen that a private investigation would be needed or desired would be one question, perhaps more palatable than the other question is how do we take care of the health of the town, food inspections, et cetera, without a gap, and which can lead to a big problem.
I think the town administrator might be able to be helpful there. As Paul mentioned, he was successful in getting backup when the building inspector quit on pretty short notice. We all know that Sherborn's health agent, who's been here quite a while, is not the only person who does those services, not the only good person, not the only person in this area. There are other options out there, and it just would require going out and trying to get one of those other options. You're in the field, and I think you see you see a lot more of this than I do, but I'm confident that there are other people out there, and hopefully town administrator can try to help you with that if you want that kind of help.
That may be, or it may be the Board of Health continues with the same agent while...
Understood. No, that's like we said, that's your decision.
It's your decision, but I want to make it clear that we, as the elected representatives of the people of the town of Sherborn, looking at this not from a Board of Health septic system type of thing, but looking at the credibility of the government itself, and the credibility of the town, we think that investigation of these kinds of allegations needs to be done outside of the department.
I don't think we're arguing that, and that principle is fine. I'm just disappointed with the process of what took so
Paul,
long
we
to
too
get
are
to
elected
this,
as
because
well.
I guess I was anticipating that we would be much closer to a resolution by now, because this has been very taxing to go through this.
That's why we
Dealing
let
with
me-
this and operating somewhat in a vacuum of communications with
We
others.
likewise are elected by the citizens of this town, and we are charged with the protection of their health and safety, and we do serve the town and all the people, and we do it to the best of our ability, much as in the same manner as you are. I will take issue with your comment about it not being rocket science. I believe you diminish the requirements for a health agent significantly when you make a comment of that sort, because in fact, it does take a significant amount of experience. It does take must be an accredited position. It must go through continuing education in the field to continue to be certified. And it is not something that, you can say it's not rocket science. No, it's not rocket science.
It's very
It's not brain surgery, but it certainly isn't carpentry either. And when you diminish the value of that, I think you are being unfair to every health agent in the state, because it is a profession, and it is a serious one, and requires quite a bit of training and experience to be done well.
Well, you need to be a registered sanitarian to look at the septic kind of issues. You need to be a food inspector who's certified by the state. You need to have CHO credentials, certified health officer credentials. So I'd agree with you, it's not rocket science, but there are certifications, there are educational conferences that have to be met every year.
I think we're still beating a dead horse, so we will agree that we will try to resolve this at our meeting on the 24th, and we will not be taking any action before that time, because we will be seeking counsel and further information.
Okay. And I mean, we were sincerely not trying to string you along here. This was a difficult decision to get to. We didn't get to it until tonight, and had we known about it ahead of time, we obviously would have talked about it earlier, but that's not what happens.
This would be an interesting expenditure for the town.
It's one that we've decided it's in the
I
public
understand.
interest to do
I
so,
understand.
because at the end of the day, we want a Board of Health that's credible. We want a Board of Health that's not going to be continually
Harassed is the word.
getting allegations that something is going wrong. And the only way to respond to that kind of complaint is through an impartial, non-involved investigation. And I would ask that you cooperate with whoever the investigator is, provide whatever.
We are very eager to work on this, and there was cooperation on other allegations that were made against the administrator for the Board of Health. And David Williams participated in
You
that.
have to speak up. Can
Oh,
you speak up the microphone?
Yes, David Williams participated in that, and Ruth,
Oh, and Shaq.
Okay, Becky also participated, and they were able to investigate those allegations and deal with that. So
That was handled as a personnel matter.
Okay.
There's nothing in this resolution about any employee of the town.
Well, thank you for, thank you for giving us the time to respond to your plans, and we'll move to next Wednesday.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Thanks, Darrell. Thanks, Chris.
Okay? Good evening.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any other business?
Yeah, that's a cell tower.
Okay.
Invoice?
Oh, I'm sorry, we do have to deal with the invoice.
Oh, the invoice, you may want to stay.
You may
for
want
that.
to stick
Yeah,
for this one,
we'll stay
Peter.
for that.
Yeah. Sorry, it's late and I'm not thinking about what we're doing next. Okay, so the next item is to consider an item that was held on September 4th concerning payment to the Board of Health agent. Do we have a recommendation on that, or anybody want to propose?
Well, I would recommend that invoice be held until it's amended. I don't have comfort paying a contractor for time spent negotiating a contract, and there were a few hours in there for that, so, and I think that was one of the reasons why it was held by one of the members of the board. So that's where I'm uncomfortable.
Anything to add, or?
Oh, you
Okay.
held it, and...
Yeah, I
and
did
Peter-
hold it.
Peter...
Yeah, I held it last week because I was uncertain of the status of that contract. I understand there's now a contract in place. This request actually deals with a period of time before the present contract, but I also did receive an allegation similar to what Peter was referring to, that there's time on this invoice which relates to contract negotiations, and I looked at that for myself and found, in fact, there were even more entries like that than the allegation had claimed, and so I'm also not comfortable releasing this until those items are removed from the invoice.
Well, I could, I could contact Mr. Lifferton to try to, take another look at those specific charges and adjust the final check if there is going to be an adjustment,
Well, I mean,
or we can bring it
well,
back.
the thing is here, the vendor here, the contractee, whatever you want to call him, consultant, submitted an invoice, and he did submit a detailed invoice, and that, I know that was one of the concerns previously, was that the invoices weren't detailed enough. In addition to all the detail involving what systems were inspected, what plans were reviewed, et cetera, there were entries, 5 different entries, like updates on contract status, updates and correspondence with board on contract information, correspondence on contract, calls and emails on contract status. If you're putting that into the entry that you're asking to be paid for, that's not appropriate. That's part of your professional overhead. And so I don't think we can tell from those block entries how much of the time was spent on that, but I'm sure with some discussion that can be worked out, and an adjusted invoice could be submitted, or some adjustment could be agreed upon, and then that invoice could be paid.
Right, but the check that was being held, didn't that refer to non-contractual discussion or reviews because it was a July-August period, or am I?
It's a July-August period.
Okay.
But there are specific line items that says basically...
Within the check.
I'm billing you for the time spent negotiating a new contract with you.
Clearly, the chair will review.
That will be further reviewed and corrected.
Yeah, and I think this just kind of illustrates the reason why special investigators are a really good idea, because we've received any number, as you have as well, any number of emails or other communications in which perceived irregularities are identified in various documentation, and those have been assembled over time, and I don't think they're going to stop. I think that having a special investigator will allow somebody neutral to look into everything and make some conclusions and bring it to all of us, so we know what the answer is.
Until we can resolve this, until we can decide to take action next Wednesday, there's still going to be work performed by the agent. And I believe the agent is under contract, a new contract for that work. And I expect that we will honor payment for that work if it's properly invoiced. So,
I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I don't have any reason not to agree with you.
Your issue is with the detail of the current, of the
On
subject invoice.
That's the present one we're dealing with, yes.
Those points are understood. I'd be concerned about opening the town up to further legal action against the town if bills aren't paid.
And we're aware of that consideration also, thanks.
Okay. All right.
So I don't know what sort of
John.
Thank you.
vote you want to take on either continuing the hold
I
of the
think
check.
it continues to be held until you and the chairman have come to some agreement, in consultation with the vendor probably, as to what parts of that were.
Well,
Not
I
billed.
don't support all those words. I
Okay,
would
go
say
ahead.
just continue to hold the bill until further action of the board.
Well,
next week.
Yeah, we're meeting next week, but I'm comfortable, I don't have as much a problem that way. I'm comfortable if David's able to assess as the person who has the authority to issue the warrant, issue the check on the warrant. If you're comfortable that these items that we've identified have been eliminated from that bill.
Well, not just eliminated, but the charges have been adjusted.
Yeah, charges adjusted, yeah. Yeah, I don't have, we get to ask you to hold payment of something if we have an issue with it. Mike did that on that particular invoice. In looking at it closely, we see that there are some charges in there that we don't think the town should pay. If you get those out of there, I'm comfortable with you releasing what the smaller amount might be.
I think if I could just say one more thing, Chair.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I think we're on board with special type of independent investigation to clear this or not clear it. And I respect your points as far as what's being billed, is that correct? But also the fact that you're willing to release properly billed payments would be great. I just think the stickler would be with the Board of Health with just essentially breaking a contract that has been signed recently for food inspection services, for septic plan reviews. There are people who have submitted plans for redoing septic systems on barely anything in their yard, just holding areas under the ground that really isn't very safe for the environment. So we certainly don't want to see that be held up.
Well, I mean,
Understanding their,
we are sensitive to that. We know that's your purview. I think, if you're concerned with the enforceability of a contract, if that's something you want to know about, I would suggest you probably should talk with town council about that. And, if you're concerned with people not having an inspector, depending on how the answer to that previous question goes, then I would urge you to talk with the town administrator and try to figure out what the backup plan is if you need one. That might be a good idea just anyway, because aside from this kind of stuff, people get sick, people, have accidents or, other things where they have to leave or something. There should be a backup plan, and I guess if there really isn't one now, we've probably been pretty lucky, and that's great. But I think that's the way to cover this.
But the other concern, I understand that a town employee was looked into as far as some questions and was completely exonerated. And in fact, the claimant then put out an email the following day with an apology for the inaccuracies in those false claims. So even though this is a contractor and it's a little different, it's not a town employee, where there was that investigation by the Board of Health, some questions asked, the answers granted with proof. I'm not saying it's a perilous situation with this contractor. There may be some other nuances that we need to look at from an independent investigator standpoint, but that was resolved fairly quickly with an apology from the accuser the following day in a written.
Yeah, and I don't know those details, but I believe you, and that's
Okay,
fine.
Let me clarify, because I don't believe David sent his letter yet.
No, but I just want to
It's a personnel
reiterate,
matter,
the
isn't it?
reason it was handled so quickly is because it was a personnel
Sure,
issue.
understood.
Yeah, that's
Is that
how
a
we view
confidential
that.
issue?
Yeah.
And not to
Okay.
confuse the issue, because what Dr. Quigg is referring to is one element in the accusation against the administrator that I met in the hallway. I discussed with Mr. Murchison. He did further investigation and agreed that, yes, that one element of his claim was inaccurate. It was not, we did not at that time, I guess I want to use the word debunk his entire claim and all of the issues that he had with the administrator's mileage claims. That was a later meeting and held treated as a personnel matter, and the town administrator.
But again, Peter, if this is a personnel matter, this probably isn't something for public discussion.
Understood.
Well, just to the extent that the town administrator did agree to write a letter to the complainant clarifying the situation, and they're still awaiting that letter.
The motion that was made and adopted by the board refers only to suspending the contractor. There is no reference to any suspension of any employee. And nothing in this motion or any motion taken by this board specifically is addressed to an employee.
And I'm getting more and more comfortable with our decision to look for a special investigator or a special counsel. And the reason is because I'm realizing all the time that all these town officials and town employees are spending, running out allegations, whether they have merit or don't have merit. And this is a way to funnel those to the person who is charged with doing a full investigation. And they'll also be able to ask questions and have some perspective on it that people who are in the situation probably don't have, including myself and probably everybody in this room. So
These motions are intended...
I didn't suggest that the motions had anything to do with the administrator of the department. I believe Dr.
Understood.
Quinn raised the issue as an example of, if you will, the fact that the information that's being claimed is sometimes misinterpreted and has been misinterpreted, most particularly in the case of the administrator and possibly further in the town health agents.
Okay, anyway, and I'm trusting that a good special counsel will get to the bottom of all this, and we'll know what the answer is.
Just to clear up any confusion, our votes is not validating any complaint,
That's
nor
right.
invalidating any complaint. What we are doing is looking at what's good government, what would citizens of a community like Sherborn expect, what would modern processes involve. And given the totality of the circumstance, without making any judgment at all on the merits of the complaint, we see these two motions as fundamentally what needs to be done in this community at this point in the life of this community.
Paul, and as your view of good government, I can tell you from a Board of Health standpoint, we'll be looking at the same thing, also with the health impact, and that's where the rub will be on this whole question with the board, as to what is good government, what is good provision of service and health service to this community.
But as you can see from tough decisions that Governor Patrick has made recently with regard to some state employees, sometimes more energy is spent in dealing with disputes and controversies, all of which are avoided if there's a change made. This resolution asks for a temporary, immediate suspension of the person who is the subject matter of these complaints. That's pretty much standard operating process. And so the governor's had to make those tough choices. Other boards and committees have had to make those tough choices. This is not a reflection on the contractor, one way or the other. It is to maintain the credibility of the government.
The governor has taken those actions upon proof of culpability.
No.
I think we're covering the same ground in different directions,
Agreed.
but it's well covered, so
Agreed.
I'd like to move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will, just one last thing. My one lament is that it took us this long to get here because I think the delay in us waiting for things that we could have responded to much earlier to the town and provided information would have helped, as opposed to having this fester for months and months. So I think this is a fine action to take. I wish we had taken it many months ago. And it would have been less taxing on our time as well to investigate, to address, while we're waiting to find out how to present what we have investigated. So, but we're
Okay.
on a better path now, and that's good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I move to go into executive session on the cell tower issue, if you have the right motion.
I do not have that motion, and I am recused from this executive session, so
if I have an old one?
I'll stay for it, but
it will be in one of the older. It's pending litigation.
exemption 3, 38.
Okay. Paul, if you want to make the motion, since I'm not going to participate in this.
I move that the Board of Selectmen enter into an executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigation position, and the vice chair, acting chair, so declares pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, and General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM, 449 Mass. 444, parentheses, 2007, those parentheses, with respect to the following pending cases: Cannon et al. Versus Town of Sherborn Zoning Board of Appeals, Cannon et al. Versus Town of Sherborn Planning Board. And pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 31A6, and General Laws, Chapter 30A, 21A7, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM, 449 Mass. 444, parentheses, 2007, close print, to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town.
I second.
Motion is seconded by Mr. Caruso. Having a second, we will now have a roll call vote. Mr. Caruso,
Aye.
Mr. Giammo,
Abstaining.
and Mr. Durensis votes aye. Having passed on a vote of 2 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstention, the open session is now closed. The board will not return to public session.
Okay.
All right.